Hello, good evening, and good day, everybody. Welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. This is episode 323. I hope you're all doing great. I'm going to take questions from the super chat and the live chat today. Ask me anything, I'll answer as much as I can. Before we get into the questions, let us see who all is there on the live chat. I can see Mac J1U, Mac4J1U, Bhaskar Bandit, Mary Kane. Good evening, Mary. Good to see you. Good morning. Good morning, Mary. Died in a plane crash. KS111 died in a plane crash all over again. Geopolitical Dubai is here from Indore. Good evening. Sentinel Spy. Yo. Neil 707 Java Stellar. Real Painter. Advait Ashwini. Ayush Gupta. Kanishk. K4 Nishk K. Who else do we have? Shivasai. Amayatul Pule from Germany. Well, good evening from Germany to Germany. Meghna Kothari, good evening. Real Painter once again. Shiva Sai, Advait Ashwini, Gajapati Dev from Odisha. Good evening indeed. Somi 0709. Shailaja B, Namaskaram indeed. Nagarand Shanoy is here from Hyderabad. Namaste to you. Nabanita Das, Namaste to you as well. Heisenberg O2J, hello, and Jai Shri Ram. Pratik Vora, hello. Ayush Singh, pranam. Himanshu Rajpurohit is here from Chennai. Well, good to have you, Himanshu Ji. Somi is here from Jaipur. Real Painter once again. Died in a plane crash. Ritik Pawar. Ayush Singh, Raghuvir Solanki. Vishwa student. Vikash PJ, good evening. Shatabhish is here from Norway. Well, good afternoon, I suppose, in Norway. I Sagar Dadimani. Ram Shreyas. Abhinav Bagalkot. Avinash, Tathagat Karan, Shivasai, Shruti Pathak, Namaskar, McLevin, good evening, Abhishek Shukla live, Vikash PJ, Heisenberg, everybody else, General Subathai is here. Well, good to see you, General Sir. Random Skull, good evening, good to have you once again. Anand V, Rajesh 9, Animals for Laugh from Mumbai, good evening. Lavanya, namaste. Good to see you, ma'am. Aniket Bhaumik, McLevin once again. Manisha Cardoso, namaste indeed. Who else? Gautami is also here. Hello. General Subotai once again. Vinav Bagalkot. Hensi Penguin, hello. Good to see you, Hensi Penguin. Anand from Karnataka, Karwar. Okay. Lavanya is here from the USA. Well, good morning, USA. And Lavanya ji. Rahul Dunake, namaskar, and everyone else as well. UKC from Australia, Straya. Okay, so Progressive Pujan is here from the Chicken Neck. Well, hope things are good at the Chicken Neck. Okay, let's get going with the questions. What questions do we have? The first question is by Mac4J1U. Few episodes ago, you said only Krishna himself could save our religion. After the UGC rules, I know why you said it. Can you? Okay. Yeah, the UGC rules, right? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I'm not sure what the government is trying to achieve. Yeah, terrible indeed. Can you describe how Bappa Rawal resisted the Turks and Arabs and why after him no one came? So Bappa Rawal is a warrior, a king from the 8th century AD. I'm not sure if we know exactly when he lived and what period of time he ruled, but it's most likely that he ruled in the 8th century AD. He belonged to the Guhilot clan of the Rajputs. At the time, they were not called Rajputs. The term Rajput was used later to describe the old ruling families of India. And he was part of one of these old ruling families, the Rawal lineage, Mewar lineage, I believe. And he reconquered many parts of northern and western India from the Arab occupiers of the region. He conquered Ghori, Ghazni, etc., right, which is Gandhar, present-day Afghanistan. And he obviously established the city that's now called Rawalpindi, right? So he was a great warrior. He defeated the Arabs. I'm not sure if the Turks were involved in India at the time. It was mainly the Arabs. It was in the 7th or 8th century that you have Muhammad bin Qasim, who makes an incursion into Sindh and does pretty nasty stuff there. So that's the beginning of the Arabic invasions, which lasted a while. And then you have the phase of the Turkic invasions that comes later. So I believe Bappa Rawal would have fought the Arabs, not the Turks, and he did a pretty good job of that. He reconquered many territories that had been captured by the Arabs, and yeah, so that's why he is still remembered today. And this happened so long ago, and we've lost all the records. That's why he is regarded. That's why there is some ambiguity, some there's a lack of clarity as to exactly what were the years during which he ruled these parts of northern and western India. So that's the deal about Bappa Rawal. Why did no one after him come? It's not like no one came after him. In northern and western India, the people that are now called the Rajputs, they resisted first the Arabic incursions and invasions of India, and then the Turkic invasions of India for several centuries. Uh, when is the Delhi Sultanate established? Okay, let's take a look at the dates. Okay, so 8th century, you have Bappa Rawal who's fighting off the Arabs. Okay, when was the Delhi Sultanate established? Let's take a look. Delhi Sultanate. So that is 1206. So from the 8th century to 1206, that's about 500 years. 500 years, you had India fighting off the Arabs and then the Turks. 5 centuries we're talking about. And even with the Delhi Sultanate, it doesn't become very large, right? It doesn't become very large. And then you have the Mughal kingdom, which becomes the Mughal Empire. That also takes time. So India fought, India resisted, but we're not taught this. And that's why we get the impression that after Bappa Rawal, nobody came and nobody fought and the Turks just won. That's not the case. There was tremendous resistance for centuries, right? It was the people who are now called the Rajputs who fought, who resisted for centuries. They shed oceans of blood, which we are not told about, and so on. So, yeah, it's because our history textbooks like to omit these parts of history. The Indian resistance to the Arabic and Turkic invasions. Okay. Bhaskar Bandit says, Privyet, Privyet, Tovarish, Privyet. Hope you're doing great. I'm great. I'm doing great. I hope you're doing great as well. Why are US veterans treated badly in the US? PTSD, drug use, no support system, homelessness. In Bharat, we see and treat army with respect, reverence, and highest dignity. Um, why is it so? Why do we in India give so much respect to people who have served in the armed forces, veterans of the armed forces? Why do Indians respect them so much? It's because we are a very old culture and civilization, and I'll tell you why. Because in Indian culture, warriors weren't oppressors. Okay, warriors were defenders of civilization. Warriors weren't oppressors. Warriors never oppressed people. If even if you had a period of time where India was fragmented, divided into multiple kingdoms, and you had 2 kingdoms fighting each other, even then, when one kingdom would, let's say 2 kingdoms in Rajasthan are fighting each other, hypothetically, and one invades the other. So when one invades the other, you have the armed forces of the one invading the territory of the other. And yet they would never touch civilians. They would never touch women, children, or innocent men. They would only fight the other kingdom's armed forces. Right? That was a discipline that we had, our ancestors had. That was the civilized way of fighting, which obviously was terrible when we came up against the barbarians, essentially. So because India's warriors have always been civilized warriors, they've never oppressed civilians, they've never oppressed the weak, the innocent, the harmless. That's why that respect for warriors is there in the blood of Indians, in the DNA of Indians. We simply respect warriors because we know they're doing the right thing. When it comes to the Anglo-Saxon world, the European world, just take a look at the history of who warriors were and what they did and who they served. They served the feudal overlords, they served the crown, and who did they oppress? Their own people, the peasantry of the same country, of the same kingdom, right? So in the Anglo-Saxon world and in the European world, warriors were typically oppressors of the people of their own kingdom, and they were pretty brutal. Their treatment of men, women, children was pretty brutal, and that's consistent over time, over centuries, right? So that's the culture that you have in the Anglo-Saxon world, in the European world. And when you have someone who served in the US armed forces, is a veteran of some tour of duty somewhere, what kind of tour of duty would they typically have done? They would have either been part of the occupation of Iraq, the occupation of Afghanistan, or some other nasty business somewhere else. What do they do there? They shoot civilians, they plunder the place, they destroy the place, they flatten cities. Do you think that's something that's worthy of respect? Yeah. So that's one reason why warriors aren't really respected in the West, right? And yeah, so, and in the US, it's not like the armed forces are a career that you have for the rest of your life. You may serve one tour of duty and get out, you know, honorable discharge or whatever kind of discharge, and then you're back in the civilian world. And then what do you do? If you have some skills, then you can start with another career. Some people don't have skills and they end up on the streets, and then it's PTSD, drug use, etc., etc., and there's no support system for them. So it's a very different culture. It's a very different cultural milieu that we're talking about, the Western world. It's not like India, right? So big difference here. Mary Kane, good to see you. Mary, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Mary asks, why are India's logistics capabilities, Army Corps of Engineers in cooperation with the UP government for Kumbh level infrastructure and security at Mela 2026, 15 crores, so underplayed? Why not brag? It's a great question. So when it comes to the Kumbh Mela, I think it was the Kumbh Mela happened last year, was it? Did it? Possibly. When did the Kumbh Mela happen? Let's quickly take it. I think it was last year. I'm wondering because I did not attend, unfortunately. Last Kumbh Mela, which year? It was 2013. The next 2020, 2025. 2025 Prayag Mahakumbh Mela. So this is in Hindi. Okay. So that's the deal. There was a Kumbh Mela in Prayag last year, and if I recall correctly, about over 600 million people participated in this. The largest human gathering in human history. 660 million people. Something like that. At least 600 million people. That's like almost half of India's population. That's larger than the populations of most countries. I think it's larger than the population of Europe. What's Europe's population? Let's take a look. Europe population. What's the population? Okay, so it's slightly less than the population of Europe. Europe's current population is about 744, 745 million people. And the Kumbh Mela saw over 600 million people attending, participating in Prayagraj, in just one city, at the Sangam of the rivers, right? Incredible. So you need incredible logistical capabilities to be able to handle this incredible inflow of people without any major incident of any kind, right? And obviously the Army Corps of Engineers was involved in cooperation with the UP government for all the infrastructure, for all the security and all the logistical arrangements and whatnot. And you have a Magh Mela 2026. I'm not very aware of that. Let's see, what is this? Magh Mela. Magh Mela 2026. Why is it all caps? That's okay. Magh Mela 2026 begins in Prayagraj. Sacred Magh Mela has commenced. It's already commenced at the Triveni Sangam, attracting millions of devotees for holy dips and spiritual rituals, etc. Magh Mela is back in Prayagraj. Magh Mela 2026. Okay, January 3 to February 15, 2026. And how many people? Mary says 15 crore. That's 150 million. That's another massive number of people. 150 million people. Right. So yeah, so it's clear that India's logistical capabilities are mind-boggling. To be very honest, right? Mind-boggling logistical capabilities. And yet, these capabilities are kind of underplayed. No one really speaks about this. The media doesn't crow and harp about it. The government of India doesn't boast about it. Why not boast? Why not brag? Is what Mary asks. Well, it's certainly something that's you know worthy of being proud of. Maybe India should brag more about this, I would say. The thing is, logistics capabilities are obviously very important, but they don't it's not something that allows you to rule the world. It's one component of, if you are a superpower, for example, you need to be good at lots of things, including logistics. But more than logistics, what you really need to be good at is technology and manufacturing. And India isn't that great right now in technology and manufacturing. So the factors that make you a major geopolitical power, global power, those factors, if you look at them, India is kind of a little bit weak right now. So that's what people like to boast about. That our country is the best, let's say, in research and development and technology. We have the best technological systems in the world. We have the best manufacturing base in the world. That's what China likes to say. Logistics, it's not that cool. It's not that, it doesn't make you a world leader. Maybe that's why it's kind of underplayed. But definitely it's something that's incredible. And maybe, like Mary says, Indians should perhaps brag a little bit more about it. Yeah, she's right. Absolutely. All right. Died in a plane crash says, since 2022, there are truckloads of videos made on YouTube about Russia's so-called colonization of Siberia. That Russia is guilty of the same crimes against natives as the US. What's my opinion as someone who has studied history in great detail? To be very fair, Russia also has colonized vast parts of Eurasia, right? I mean, the Duchy of Muscovy was the small area around Moscow, and that emerged in the aftermath of Russia's liberation from the Mongol yoke. That's several centuries ago. Before that, Russia's territory was Ukraina, which is Ukraine. The original capital of the Rus people was Kiev. So that's where Russia belongs, Ukraine and Moscow, that region. And today, Russia has this gigantic, ginormous territory it controls, which is part of Russia today. All the eastern Siberian and so on territory, right? So obviously, Russia colonized this territory. It conquered and occupied these territories. So does that mean that Russia is guilty of the same crimes against natives as the United States? It doesn't mean that. That is a false equivalence. Russia did not ever genocide people on anything like the scale at which the Americans genocided their natives, right? And even today, if you look at, I'm sure there must have been clashes, there must have been strife, there must have been violence, and there must have been massacres here and there. That sort of stuff happens when there is conquest. But there was no genocide. What the Americans did to their natives is nothing short of genocide. Please understand that. The Russians did not do that. Of course, they were more powerful, and they grabbed, they stole the territory, let's say, of various indigenous people in Siberia, Tuva, Yakutia, Sakha, blah, 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 all that. Right? But there was no genocide. Yeah, sure, they must have, dispossessed the natives of the territories and prevented them from, expressing or deprived them of their rights of self-determination and so on and so forth. That sort of thing must have happened, of course. But Russia did not conduct genocide. Russia did not wipe out hundreds of millions of wild bison. Russia did not do any of those things. So you can't draw an equivalence between what the European colonizers, occupiers of the Americas did vis-a-vis what the Russians did in their Far East. It's simply not correct. False equivalence, right? So I'm not sure. I've not seen any of these videos. Yeah, but if they are trying to claim that Russia has conducted genocide or that Russia, what it did is similar to what the Americans did in the Americas, that's completely incorrect. Completely incorrect. Ayush Gupta says, good evening to you as well. Don't you think this tariff on EU and also EU realizing that in every war now they suffer the most because of the US will make them unite and internally they will try stuffs to secure their future? Yeah. Okay, a good question. So now the question Ayush is asking is that now does the EU or do the EU nations finally do they realize that the Americans have been taking advantage of them. And now the Americans are imposing tariffs. Donald Trump's administration is imposing tariffs on the Europeans. 10% tariffs on everybody until June or something, and then it increases to 25% until Greenland is handed over to the US entirely, completely, etc. Right? Uh, and of course, that's on top of whatever other tariffs that the Trump administration may or may not have imposed on various nations in the EU. So does this finally, and Trump wants Greenland. He wants to just grab a gigantic piece of territory that belongs to Denmark. I mean, he wants to dispossess his own ally of its territory. I mean, what sort of behavior is this? This is nothing short of just naked imperialism, plain bullying, right? So, will this finally make the EU nations realize that everywhere, whatever happens, they are made, they are being pushed over by the US? The US is bullying them. And will this now make the EU nations unite, and they will now hopefully come together and resist and oppose the US? Is is this finally going to make this happen? Has Trump and his actions finally, broken the camel's back? Does it represent the straw that breaks the camel's back? That's the question. Well, no, nothing's going to happen. You see, right now, Keir Starmer, the PM, the Prime Minister of the UK, is saying that we are opposed to the US claiming Greenland and trying to steal it from Denmark. And Monsieur Macron of France has said that we will not accept any of this. C'est terrible. We don't accept. This is very bad behavior, and we shall oppose this sort of endeavor by Monsieur Trump, and so on. All words, all talk. And they've sent some soldiers to Greenland, like 20, 30 soldiers cumulatively. See, the deal is this: the US owns the EU. The US has penetrated the EU so incredibly deeply that every single EU leader is in power because of the US. Okay? They have deep connections with the US, their pockets, their bank accounts, all of that. They won't survive the day the US decides this leader is not, good for us. And they draw their legitimacy, their power, whatever money they have, etc., from their connections with the US. They simply can't do anything that genuinely opposes the US. So what's going to happen is various EU leaders are going to make statements, strong statements condemning, Trump's strong arm tactics and so on. And they will all initially say that, Greenland is a sovereign Danish territory, blah, blah, blah. But eventually what's going to happen is that Denmark is going to be paid a certain sum of money by the Trump administration, and Greenland is going to be handed to the US. That's what's going to happen. This is already written, let's say. It's done. It's a fait accompli, right? So essentially nothing's going to happen. The EU will keep on kowtowing to the US. The NATO nations will do the same. Please understand, the major power in Western Europe, it's not France, it's not Germany, it's not Italy, it's not Spain, it's not whatever else. It is the US. The US dictates whatever happens, and they all just go along with that. So nothing's going to change. Ritik Pawar says, as the US is creating a new world order, isn't this a good opportunity for India to try and rise by using the new rules, since the old rules are not helping us grow faster? What India needs to do to rise, like you say, like all of us want, India needs to reform its internal affairs. We need to have deep-rooted reforms in all the sectors, whether it is whether it's about improving the ease of doing business, cutting the red tape, whether it is economic reforms, whether it is farm sector reforms, whether it's educational reforms. India needs deep reforms all over the place, and that's not happening. You can't simply use new rules to rise. How are you going to rise? How do you rise? You become a manufacturing power. How do you become a manufacturing power? By becoming a genuine world leader in research and development and technology. How can you become a world leader in research and development and technology? By having a world-class education system. There are no shortcuts to these things. We have to reform all these sectors, and nothing is being done. So simply by using new rules, their new rules are going to suit the US. They're not going to suit India. The new rules of the new world order are going to seek to vassalize India, to ensure India never does these reforms. Yeah. So what India needs to do is to do the hard things, to reform internally. Do you see any reforms? There we are. Bhaskar Bandit says declining world population, decreasing sperm quality every 10 years. Do you think allegedly it's a move from major corporations given we have so much microplastics, BPA, phthalates, hormone endocrine disruptors, etc. in our everyday lives? Whether it's a conspiracy, whether it's a move, whether it's just an you know undesirable side effect of whatever, but it is what it is. All these factors are converging together to cause a major decline in the world population. Like you say, all these factors, right? You see microplastics in bodily tissue everywhere, microplastics in organs, in brain, in testicles, in hearts, lungs, and just regular human tissue. Microplastics in water, microplastics in foods, microplastics everywhere. I'm sure it's going to have deleterious effects downstream. You have and maybe that's causing one of the factors that's causing decreasing sperm quality every 10 years across the world, across the board. BPA, I'm not sure what that is. Phthalates, hormone endocrine disruptors. You use plastic everywhere. You have substances that leach out from the plastic and mess up people's hormones. You have all these issues, and it's like the perfect storm. Everything comes together to create this major disruption. So does it mean that there allegedly could be a move from major corporations who are all coordinating in order to create this perfect storm, or is it just the outcome of several decades, maybe 7-8 decades of the way we have been doing things, right? Dumping stuff into the oceans and whatnot, as if there's no tomorrow, and eventually tomorrow catches up with you. I'm not sure if there's a conspiracy, but whether there's a conspiracy or not doesn't matter, because here we are right now. The oceans are full of plastic. There's overfishing happening. If this continues, you could have anoxic oceans that could lead to a mass extinction event, possibly. We've had mass extinction events in the past that were precipitated by anoxia in the oceans. So what's anoxia? Depletion of oxygen levels in the oceans. What causes that? Multiple factors. But choking the oceans with plastic, which kills off marine life, in combination with overfishing, which depletes fish stocks, that can cause imbalances in the ocean ecosystems, and a mass extinction could start from the ocean. The oceans dying out and no longer producing the amount of oxygen that we need. We have to understand, much of the oxygen we breathe comes from, it's produced by phytoplankton. That's microscopic organisms that live in the ocean. And you mess up the oceans, you're gonna affect that. So I'm not sure if it's a conspiracy. I'm not sure if there are governments that have decided that their corporations are going to do all this stuff and poison the world and have declining population levels and all. I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm not saying it's out of the question. It's definitely not out of the question, but I don't know if that is the case, right? But whether it's a conspiracy or not, this, we know exactly what's happening. If you look at the surface biomass, the biomass of the planet today, it's mostly human beings and domesticated animals. Maybe 1% or 2% wild animals now. 50 years ago, it was like 80%, 90% wild animals. So see what we've done. And it's not we who did this, it's the powerful nations that have done this. Much of this has happened in Africa. Deforestation and just the culling of millions and millions of animals, vast herds of animals. Where are the elephants? Where are the wild beast? Where are the zebras? All these animals that we used to teem across the African landscape. There's hardly anything left now. The Europeans have shot everything to death. So yeah, that's where we are, and that's we could be facing a major crisis if not us, our descendants, one generation down the line. Yeah, it's a pretty bleak situation right now, actually. Okay, thoughts on Zarmaros, a Brahmin naked philosopher who traveled to Athens in 19 BC and famously immolated himself alive in the presence of the Roman emperor. Thoughts? I don't know what thoughts to give about that. It's something that happened 2000 over 2000 years ago, and the the Greeks recorded that, didn't they? So why would, I mean? Obviously, his name would not be Zarmaros. Zarmaros is the Greek version of whatever his actual name was. He was a Brahmin, right? Naked philosopher or whatever. And for whatever reason, he decided to end his life on the funeral pyre and in the presence of the Roman emperor. Why would he do such a thing? I have absolutely no idea. Uh, the Greeks record that maybe he wanted to impress the Roman emperor or whatever. I'm not sure what would cause someone to do that. So I don't really have too much of thoughts about this. It's an interesting historical occurrence. It's an interesting historical record. See, a lot of a lot of times there is this allegation that's thrown out at Indians, at India, at Indian culture, civilization, that we had this practice of forcing women to burn themselves alive after their husbands died. The fact is that this was a very, very fringe occurrence. It happened very rarely, and women who decided to do this were very strongly discouraged and dissuaded from doing so. Their family members would come, their siblings, their parents, their children. They would plead not with the woman not to do that. So it happened in the rarest of rare circumstances. And then there was this atrocity literature that the British created in order to precipitate, to justify Christian conversions, that Hinduism is evil and so on. But this example, Zarmaros, for example, it shows that it's not like it was only women who did that. Even men did that. I mean, you have multiple examples from history, especially in dharmic culture, where we have examples of men who immolated themselves alive. There is this very famous Vietnamese monk self-immolation, right? In the 1960s. Yeah, Thich Quang Duc. So, okay, trigger warning, because these days we do that. Trigger warning. Don't watch it if you have a weak constitution, weak heart. But this thing happened, right? This monk, he immolated himself alive to protest the Christianization of his country, of his culture. He was a Buddhist monk, a dharmic monk, right? So this is something that's been part of dharmic culture. This has been done in the past as if somebody wanted to repent of a sin or something they did wrong, or to restore their honor, very similar to the Japanese practice of seppuku or harakiri. And also as in protest, you would do that in protest as well. Yeah, there is this famous example of a king in Gujarat whose sons disobeyed him and and retrieved gold and treasure, etc., from a ship that had been shipwrecked near the Somnath temple. And the king forbade his sons from going and taking that treasure, but they went and did that anyway. So the king said, "I have been shamed, my family has been shamed." So he goes to the center of the city, puts up a funeral pyre, and immolates himself. Right? So you've had these examples in Indian history, in the history of dharmic cultures. Many such examples. Krishnant Bordoloy says, "We put 30% tariffs on US pulse imports. What are my thoughts?" All right. Give and take, push and pull. All right. So India is demonstrating to the US that, you know what, we are not going to be pushovers. You're going to impose tariffs on us. We're going to impose tariffs back on you. And let's see how this game goes. So clearly a well thought out strategy. And we'll wait and watch and see how it goes. Pranav Nair says, "Why did the white colonizers engage in the Atlantic slave trade and not use Native Americans as slaves instead of genociding them?" Well, you see, there are multiple reasons for that. First of all, maybe the Europeans thought that Africans made better slaves. They were more docile or whatever, right? Not my words, probably their words, that maybe Africans were better suited for hard labor and they were more obedient and so on. Perhaps that's one of the factors. Secondly, the Native Americans, they were very used to the climate, to the weather. They did not need so much help and shelter and whatnot from the enslavers. So if you were a black slave, you had no understanding of the climate, the geography, whatever, right? And to stay alive, you would be completely helpless. And to stay alive, you would completely depend totally you depend totally on the white master, right? Who would give you warm clothes or whatever, and you would not know how to survive if you escaped. So that's why black slaves would probably never attempt to escape. The Native Americans, they knew how to survive the climate. They knew the geography. They knew exactly where to escape. They knew the other, Native American tribes, clans, whatever. They knew how to communicate with them. Many Native American tribes had different languages, but they still understood each other's culture, and they probably knew how to communicate with each other. So if they escaped, they could make good of their escape, right? They could escape successfully, and they would not just die out somewhere because the climate was too harsh or whatever. They could live off the land. They knew where to seek help. They knew where the other tribes were. Many factors like this. So that's why the white and so that's why the white colonizers preferred to have black slaves. It's not like they did not have any Native American slaves. They did, but not as many as the black slaves. And the Native Americans were very enterprising and so on. They could live off the land, they could live off the bison and so on. And that's why the colonizers, the occupiers of North America, they genocided not just the Native Americans but also the bisons in order to destroy the native way of life, right? So that is what exactly happened, right? Shatabish says Qatar, a US partner, yet enables Hamas and Houthis covertly/directly. Hard to think Israel is oblivious to this. US be fueling conflicts either ways. What do you think? We know that Qatar is a trusted US partner. When the Americans were considering handing over Afghanistan to the Taliban, they engaged in the Doha dialogue with the Taliban, right? Doha is the capital of Qatar. And eventually, this led to the Doha Accord with the Taliban, and some clauses of the Doha Accord have been kept secret. So, who facilitated all of this? It is Qatar that facilitated this. Um, we know very well that several top-ranking Hamas leaders have lived in Doha, or possibly even now live in Doha, right? So, Qatar plays a very specific role in service of the United States, right? Um, so it's not like the US doesn't know this. The US knows exactly what's happening. Maybe the US is perhaps possibly potentially behind this. When you are a superpower, you have your fingers in every pie, you have a presence in every geography. You sometimes want to keep a certain balance in a certain region. So let's say West Asia. The US, you know what? West Asia has been permanently in crisis for decades. All the way from the 1940s onwards, it's been permanently in crisis. Why is West Asia permanently in crisis? Maybe it is being kept permanently in crisis to maintain a certain kind of balance of power, geopolitical balance of power. You have Israel on one side, then you have certain nations that are opposed to Israel on the other side, then you have certain US assets that kind of remain neutral. Saudi Arabia doesn't oppose Israel. The UAE doesn't oppose Israel. You had other nations that oppose Israel, and those nations, maybe they are not that potent or relevant anymore. Saddam Hussein was opposed to Israel, right? Where is Saddam Hussein today? Where is Iraq? Iraq is no longer a factor, a geopolitical factor. It's a vassal of the US. It's a colony of the US. Similarly, Syria now is a colony of the US. It is currently ruled by a former Al Qaeda terrorist, former ISIS terrorist, who now reports essentially to the US. So the US maintains a certain balance of power in the region. It has nothing to do with what's right or what's wrong. Power is amoral. Geopolitics is amoral. There's no right or wrong in it. It's just about who wins and who controls the region. And you will do it in whatever way is required. Yeah. So sometimes you have to consort with the nastiest of people, like ISIS terrorists and whatnot. Well, it is what it is. So that's the situation in West Asia. Sometimes you have to play a double game. Sometimes you have to fuel conflicts both ways, right? General Subothai is a new member. Well, General Subothai, always good to see you, sir. You are one of the all-time greats. Thank you so much for becoming a member. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the channel. Pranav Nair says, how did the US and Canada end up as two separate nations despite sharing so much similarity? Also, why is cricket not popular in Canada, although it's part of the British Commonwealth? So, how did the US and Canada end up as two separate nations? How did Mexico also, you know, remain separate? Um, See, the US became a nation in 1776 when the rebels who were fighting against the British government, against the British crown, were able to defeat uh, Lord Cornwallis. Right, Lord Cornwallis was the commander in chief of the British forces that sought to uh, maintain British rule over the Americas, and Lord Cornwallis was defeated by uh, by George Washington and so on. So that's how the United States became an independent nation. And initially, it was just the East Coast, right? If you look at the map of the U.S. over the years, let's do that. Okay, map of U.S. since 1776. Map of U.S. from 1776. Let's see. So, what did the U.S. look like in 1776? Let's see. So, you see, um, the US in 1776 was kind of like this small little place, right? And in the north, you had the French and the British who still very much ruled. So, what is now Canada was very much under British rule, even after the US became, an independent nation. Initially, see the green part that you see over here, that was the United States. That is 1783. And then you have slow westward expansion. Then in 1803, you have the Louisiana Purchase. You know this yellow part that becomes part of the U.S. The U.S. almost doubles in size, and then they keep on going westwards, and displacing and massacring the natives, and that's what happened. But they never bothered to go northwards because it was frighteningly cold and not that desirable. So they allowed the British to keep possession of that, the British and the French. So eventually, you have this new nation that becomes Canada. Part of it is Quebec, which is French speaking. The rest of it is British speaking or English speaking. So that's kind of how it went. The uh, the United States ended up occupying the prime territory in North America, the nicest territory, the most fertile and useful territory. North of the US, as soon as Canada starts, you get frighteningly cold climate, weather, and so on. And much of Canada is empty land. Only native people are made to survive there. White people don't stay there, right? Because it's too cold, too inhospitable. And those territories are given to the natives. You guys stay there. You guys live there. That sort of thing. So that's kind of how it went. Now, why is cricket not popular in Canada, even though it's part of the British Commonwealth? I am not really sure. I've not looked into the history of why cricket was not popular there. You have um, a cricket and curling or skating or something club in Toronto, right? Where you had a bunch of cricket matches or series between India and Pakistan that were played there. Pretty swing friendly wickets over there. Saurav Ganguly took 5 wickets on at least one occasion over there. Dibbly dobbly, medium pace guy. My grandma could bowl faster than him, but my grandma could bowl faster than Saurav Ganguly essentially. But yeah, he took 5 wickets at least once. So it's a pretty swing and seam friendly place. I think it's called the Toronto Cricket Club or something. Toronto Cricket and Skating, Curling or something club. Toronto Cricket Club. What's it look like? It's got a stadium, and sometime in the 1990s there was a match between, I don't know, Pakistan was involved in Inzamam ul Haq. Someone was calling him Alu from the stands with a megaphone. So Inzamam lost it and tried to attack the guy with a bat, and he should have been arrested for that. But well, got lucky. Nothing happened. He wasn't arrested. So I suppose you do have some cricket that's played in Canada, but overall, it's the US that's a much more powerful cricketing nation than Canada in North America. The US recently participated in the T20 Cricket World Cup, and they defeated Pakistan. And the US cricket team is mainly Indian origin players, right? But that's okay. So there's a lot of cricket that's played in the US, mainly by people from the subcontinent, maybe mainly Indians. Vinod Ringaraj says, I'm a doctor and a bookworm. Thank you for opening my mind to new horizons about just history and geopolitics. Learned a lot from you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your very kind message. And yeah, I do my best. If more people get to learn something new from me, even if it's like a little bit, then yeah, then what else can I ask for? That's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. To maybe, you know, spread a little bit of knowledge that you may not have come across before. So yeah, I'm very pleased. I'm very happy to hear from you, Dr. Vinod Ringaraj. Thank you so much for very kind message, and all the best. Keep learning, keep growing, sir. All right. Iron Fist OS says, what language did the colonizers use when they first made contact with the local populations of North America and India? See, when there's first contact, the first time ever there is contact, there's going to be complete communication breakdown. You're going to communicate in sign language and whatnot. Okay? Because when the Mayflower, okay, let's talk about the second attempt to colonize the Americas, not Jamestown. Americans find Jamestown very uncomfortable. The story of Jamestown makes Americans very uncomfortable, right? Captain John Smith, Mataoka, Pocahontas, and so on. That's a nasty piece of business. Jamestown, what happened there? Cannibalism and whatnot. So we'll not talk about Jamestown. We'll talk about Plymouth. The Mayflower comes in and docks, at Plymouth. There's the Plymouth Rock, and then they find Massasoit and so on, right? Yeah. What was the name? Massasoit was one of them. The Massasoit was down south. Okay, I have to refresh my memory about that. But they come across the natives, and initially, the English speak English, right? They were Protestants, the same as the French Huguenots, and they speak English. They don't know anything about the people of the land. They just set foot on, and the natives. Well, at that point in time, they would not really have known English, apart from one fellow who did speak English, but he comes into the picture later. So the point is, look, there's a long story behind it. You can watch my Understanding America series for that. But the point is, when two cultures or two population groups who have never come across each other first make contact, they initially will use sign language and some sort of miming and all that to communicate food, water, that sort of thing everyone understands, right? So you kind of establish some baseline communication, and then you see what kind of sound they make when they talk about food or water. I say water. What do you say? Oh, that's your word for water. Oh, yeah, well, that's your word for water. I call it water. So after a few hours, you kind of have a very rudimentary understanding of what are the basic words, the major words. And over a couple of weeks, you probably can start communicating in each other's languages, at least at a very rudimentary level. So that's how it goes, and that would have happened in India as well. When the Portuguese first came, obviously, see, the Portuguese, Vasco da Gama, when he came to India, under the guidance of an Indian sailor, right? When Vasco da Gama reached the Cape of Good Hope, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and when he was in East Africa, he thought that he had the best ships in the world. And then he saw these gigantic Indian ships that are like 3-4 times larger than his ships. And he saw Indians have been here for a very long time. So clearly he knew that now I can reach India, because this is a place where Indians have a significant presence. So then he took the help of one Indian sailor. Some say he was a Gujarati sailor or whatever. And that's how he was able to reach Calicut probably, right? Kozhikode. And during the journey, if the Gujarati guy or the Indian guy was with him, I suppose he and his crew would have learned something about Indian languages from him, right? So that would have given them some kind of background in Indian language and communication and so on. So yeah, that's how it would have gone. Pranav Nair says, what's the foundation of the strong US Israel relationship? What drives their partnership beyond shared values and strategic interests? Could you dive deep into this and give a detailed breakdown? So, you see, there are two kinds of relationships: a relationship of shared values and a relationship of shared interests. When the US talks to India, they say, we have shared values, democracy, and blah, 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 blah. Values, values. This intangible, mystical substance called values. So when they talk with India, the Americans, they talk about shared values. When they talk to Pakistan, the Americans talk about shared interests, because interests over supersede values. Interests always supersede values. If I have certain values, but I'm shown a pot of gold, my values may disappear potentially. That's human nature, right? So interests always supersede values. When it comes to the US and Pakistan, it's always shared interests. When it's US and India, it's shared values. Maybe with the US and Israel, it is shared interests plus values, possibly, right? What's the interests? Well, Israel, what is in Israel's interests? It is to remain in existence and be the most powerful nation in West Asia, which it is. So that is Israel's interest. It knows that there are many nations in the region that are hostile to its existence, that seek to erase it from the map of the world. For example, Iran. Since 1979, we have the regime of the Ayatollahs in Iran, and they regard the US as Shaitan-e Bozorg, the great Satan, and they regard Israel as number two Shaitan, right? And they say that Israel has no right to exist. So you have such existential threats in the region when you are Israel. So Israel seeks to continue existing, and to continue existing, it needs to be the most powerful nation in the region. It needs to have a nuclear deterrent, which it does have. So that's Israel's uh, interests in a nutshell. What is the US and its interests? Or what are the American interests in the region? Well, energy. It's an energy-rich region, oil, gas, and the US seeks to have complete control over the nations in the region. Well, most of the nations are US allies, assets, vassals, whatever you want to call it, same thing, right? And they pay regular tribute to the US by buying tremendous quantities of very expensive American weapons, and they allow the US to control, to dictate where you can sell oil, where you can't sell oil. The Saudis have been a little naughty recently because they've been selling oil to China in yuan, which is very naughty, and the US obviously will have taken note of that. And yeah, so despite that, Saudi Arabia is mainly a US asset, a US ally. It very recently bought a tremendous quantity of American weapons, ammunition, right? Tremendous quantity of beautiful American weapons, that sort of thing. Um, so that's the US uh, set of interests in the region: to control the nations, to offset threats like Israel, like Iran, right? By arming and by arming all its allied nations in the region, and to keep Israel the most powerful nation in the region, so that even the American allies will stay in check. So the US seeks to create to have a specific, very clear, very specific balance of power in the region, and Israel is vital for that. So that you can see that there is a significant shared interests between the US and Israel vis-a-vis West Asia. And of course, you see, Israel is a Jewish nation. You have a tremendous Jewish diaspora in the US. There was a time in the 1930s when New York was more than 30% Jewish. You still have very significant Jewish population in New York. The Jewish people are very enterprising. They are very brilliant, and they rise to high positions in whatever country they live in. So you have many Jewish people who are in high positions in the in US politics, in US government and all. And because of that influence also, you have a very warm outlook towards Israel from the US and so on. So that's the kind of those are the factors that are the foundation of the very strong, very robust, long lasting US Israel relationship. It's beyond shared values, it's beyond strategic interests. It's a very long lasting, long term relationship. All right. Okay, next question is not a question. Swapnanthar. Swapnanthar, thank you very much, Swapnanthar ji. Thank you. Om Popale says, why is Afghanistan much more Islamized than any Muslim nation, even Iran? They are super Islamic, it seems. What are my thoughts? Okay. Um, Afghanistan is way more Islamized than, for example, even Iran, because you have to look at the history. See, Afghanistan was ruled by various kings, like, what are the names? The guy who turned Nuristan into Kafiristan, sorry, Kafiristan into Nuristan. What was his name? Abdul Rashid or whatever. Uh, Kafiristan, Nuristan. So who did this? Okay. Okay, Amir Abdul Rahman Khan. So Nuristan was this place where you had Hinduism in Afghanistan. Okay, see, Google will say its people practiced ancient polytheistic religions. I mean, what are the polytheistic religions of the subcontinent? It's obviously Hinduism, right? So the people practice Hinduism, and then Abdul Rahman Khan forcibly converted the people to Islam and renamed the area Nuristan. So Afghanistan, why is it so Islamized? Is the question once again coming back to it. Look, Afghanistan is the first part of India that was Islamized. It is the original Kashmir. It is the first part of India. It used to be called Gandhar historically for thousands of years. And the Turks were able to first succeed in conquering which part of India? Gandhar. And they were able to first Islamize that part of India. At that time, about 1,000 years before today, the population of Gandhar was primarily Buddhist. And whenever you've seen this across Central Asia, etc., wherever you have Buddhist populations, the conversion to Islam is very rapid. Wherever you have Hindu populations, it's very tough to convert them to Islam. So Central Asia became Islamic so rapidly because it was mainly, Buddhist territory. Same about Gandhar. 1,000 years ago, it was mainly a Buddhist population, and the Buddhists all converted to Islam. And until the 21st century, you still had Hindus and Sikhs there, but no Buddhists. So 1,000 years ago, Afghanistan was converted to Islam. The majority population became Islamic, Muslim. Hindus remained in existence until the 20th, 21st centuries, right? And within Hindus, we also include the Sikh people, right? So it's got 1,000-year history of Islam. And then what happened is that the Turks who ruled Afghanistan, so the first Islamic rulers of Afghanistan were the Ghoris. The Ghoris were originally Buddhists, and they converted, and the population converted. And then you had Ghazni, Mahmud of Ghazni, right? He was a Turk. So then Afghanistan is ruled by the Turks for centuries. And they bring in other population groups from Central Asia. They bring in the Turkmens, they bring in the Hazaras came, it's a different story. We'll not go there. The Uzbeks, and so on. So multiple Turkic ethnic groups become part of the Afghan population. The core people obviously are the Pashtuns, who were originally Hindus and Buddhists, mainly Buddhists, and before that Hindus. So it's got the longest, oldest Islamic history in the subcontinent. But Iran became Islamized before Afghanistan, right? Before Gandhar. So what's the deal there is the question. I think, see, the deal is that even Iran, Persia, was ruled by Turks for several centuries. I mean, when Genghis Khan went after Persia, which was the Khwarezm Empire, he went after the Turks who were ruling Khwarezm. But well, the population, well, it also suffers when this happens. So the Turks were ruling Persia and also Afghanistan. And then you have native kings who also ruled, like the Suris and all, right? Sher Shah Suri, of course, he was born in Bihar and he ruled Delhi, but he was Afghan. And then you have the Duranis, who were Pashtun, but who would have Turkic blood and so on. So it's a complicated, convoluted history. But when we come to the 20th century, so there's a period of time when Afghanistan is kind of secular, officially at least in the cities. You have people wearing European clothes and all. In the rural areas, people would still be wearing burqas and whatnot. But in Kabul, people would wear Western clothes. That's how it was in the middle of the 20th century. And then you have the Saur Revolution, the Soviets invade, and then the Americans arm Pakistan. They they tap into the Pakistani madrasas and whatnot, and they foment the Mujahideen uh, actions against the Soviet Union. So cross-border infiltration of Mujahideen from Pakistan into Afghanistan, and the Mujahideen are super radicalized people who come from madrasas in Pakistan, and they overall later over time they start taking over parts of Afghanistan and repelling the Soviets. By 1989 or wherever, the Soviets leave, and they leave behind this government of Najibullah. But large parts of Afghanistan come under the sway of the Mujahideens, who are radical Islamists, right? And eventually, by the Najibullah meets a very nasty end, um, and Kabul is taken over by the Mujahideens, and then you have civil war between the various Mujahideen factions, Gulbuddin Hikmatyar versus Abdul Rashid Dostam versus whoever else, and so on and so forth. Sigbatullah Mujadidi, Burhanuddin Rabbani, and they are all fighting each other, bang, bang, bang. And they're all Islamists. And under their rule, obviously, Afghanistan, whether the people of Afghanistan, even if some of them were secular, they have to become full on Islamized, wear the burqas and whatnot, have beards, right? And then you have the Taliban rule and so on. So over time, because of the way things happened and the kind of people who rule Afghanistan, that's why Afghanistan became way more Islamized than even Iran today, right? That's the kind of story it has seen. History it has seen. Romal Biju says, does Jews influence the US? Do Jews influence the US or its economy or deep state? Doesn't have any religious ideology. I'm curious about my thoughts about it. I think the Jewish diaspora in the US is super influential. It is super influential in business. It's super influential in Silicon Valley, for example, whether it's Google, Page and Brin, whether it is Microsoft, Zuckerberg, who's also Jewish, right? Um, Super influential in big tech in Silicon Valley, and obviously you have plenty of Jewish politicians who have risen to great prominence. So the Jewish people are very enterprising. They are obviously a brilliant people, and they have found ways to succeed far in regions that are in nations and countries and kingdoms and empires that are far from their place of origin. And so it's clear that the Jewish people are very influential in the US. They do influence the economy, they do influence US politics. Um, I'm not sure about the deep state. Deep state, what is the deep state? What's my definition of deep state? Clearly, the US deep state does exist. It is a small number of people. Maybe it's all men. Maybe it's 150 men, as Chamat Pali Hapitia would say, who rule the world behind the scenes. Now, are Jewish people part of that? I could not possibly comment about that because I have no idea. But clearly, from what we see, whether it's the economy, whether it's big tech, whether it's Silicon Valley, whether it is US politics, the Jewish people are indeed very influential, and that's not some kind of secret. It's pretty well known to everybody. Vivek Singh says, you have advocated hard power on over soft power. But except for the Navy, most of our defense PSUs are incompetent. How will they change? Can the private sector help? Well, the private sector can help, but only if the defense sector wants to be helped, right? Let's say I'm a private sector manufacturer. I am manufacturing howitzers. Well, I'll manufacture the best howitzers in the world, artillery pieces. But if the armed forces are not willing to buy my artillery pieces, what on earth happens? Right? Kalyani, Baba Kalyani. Let's see. Baba Kalyani, the managing director of Bharat Forge. What is Bharat Forge? Okay. Bharat Forge is this outstanding multinational company, Indian company involved in forging, automotives, energy, construction, mining, railways, marine, aerospace, and defense industries. They manufacture some of the best artillery equipment in the world. But does the Indian government buy it for the armed forces? Not really. So, you see, you may have high quality defense, uh, manufacturing in the private sector. But if the armed forces are not interested in buying it, if the government doesn't care, then what happens? Right? Hard power is essential. Hard power is indispensable. Hard power always trumps soft power. But I don't know what the Indian defense procurement process is. I mean, some people would allege that there's an import lobby or whatever. I'm not sure how true or false it is. I am not deep into defense analysis and whatnot, but there are lots of people who very respectable, reputable commentators who say that there is this defense lobby that seeks to this import lobby that seeks to import all defense equipment from other countries, even though you may be manufacturing better equipment of the same type that you're importing in India. So that's an issue, right? Uh, I think the government of India needs to crack the whip and step in, but maybe there are entrenched interests and whatnot. I think it's super complicated, super convoluted, and maybe the government of India, central government, isn't powerful enough to defeat these lobbies or whatever. I'm not sure what the deal is. Yeah, that's the issue. That's why I keep advocating reforms. We need to reform all this stuff and align all of our institutions with the national interest. Everything you do should be 100% aligned with the national interest. Let's say you want 100 howitzers. So you need them right now, which means you should not take 73 years to do the procurement procedure. And then you want ideally to buy it from Indian manufacturers. So even if the Indian manufacturer, it is, the quality is maybe 10% less than the thing you're importing from outside, you should still get it from the Indian manufacturer because the price will be cheaper and you can buy more. And overall, it'll still work. So the processes should be aligned with the national interest. The policies should be aligned with the national interest. But I'm not sure if that's entirely the case right now, and that's a major issue. So we need reforms, but where are the reforms? Yeah. Ganapati says recent reports have shown that the Baloch Liberation Army is using Starlink for communications. From this, can we conclude that the BLA does not work for India, but rather the US or Israel? Also, if US already has Pakistan under control, what use is BLA? So I have not seen these reports. Okay, I'm not aware of this. I cannot corroborate what you're saying. Let us try and quickly take a look at this. Baloch Liberation Army, Starlink. Do we have a connection? Tactical use. They've used Rumble and so on. Starlink. Do we have Starlink deals? Starlink reportedly. So I'm not seeing anything right now over here. Do we have Sajid Aziz? Starlink. Starlink. There's no hit for Starlink. I'm not sure about this. Not sure where you've heard about this, but I am not able to corroborate that in 30 seconds. Maybe it may take longer to corroborate what you're saying, but okay. So I haven't seen any evidence of the Baloch Liberation Army using Starlink for communications. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, whatever it is. Maybe it's true because you've seen it. Okay. So hypothetically, if the BLA is indeed using Starlink, that it means that the US has given them access to Starlink. Or maybe they have somehow acquired the Starlink hardware, the receiver or whatever, and they are using it. What does it indicate? Without the specific information about whether they have been given Starlink access by the US or not, or whether they have simply somehow acquired, the hardware and are using it surreptitiously. Without that information, I can't say who they are working for. I don't think the BLA works for India in any official capacity. India has been talking about Balochistan from time to time, but are we actually supporting the BLA? The Pakistanis claim so, but where's the evidence? Maybe the BLA are being supported by Afghanistan, maybe by Iran. Who knows? I don't know. Right? So I, first of all, don't know whether the BLA has ever worked for India. They have sought Indian support. Of course, they will seek Indian support. India is the mother nation, right? India is the mother nation. They will seek support. But has India ever supported the BLA? I think 2014, 2015, whenever Prime Minister Modi said something about Balochistan from the Red Fort, after that, has something actually happened? I'm not sure. So I don't know if the BLA ever worked for India, was ever supported by India. Is there a possibility the BLA works for the US or Israel? Well, if they were working for the US or Israel, they would not be fighting the Pakistanis, right? They would be fighting the Iranians. The BLA is not fighting the Iranians. So that would strongly indicate the BLA is not fighting, is not being um, used as an asset by the US or Israel. So there is a paucity of information. Without that information, I can't say one way or I can't say it's this way or that way, one way or the other. I really can't say. You need more information to be able to make a clear uh, case for BLA doing this or that. Died in plane crash says, does China even have the legs to reach the Arctic and Greenland? Your opinion on India's recent focus on submarines. Also, Tua had joined the USSR voluntarily in 1944. Okay, multiple pieces of thing. Tua. First of all, those of you who are wondering where is Tua, have we opened the map today? Have we not? It's been 1 hour. It's been 1 hour, 12 minutes. We should use maps, yes? So where is Tua? Where is the Tuva region of Russia? Tuva, Russia. Tuva, Russia. Tuva Republic, okay, is here. So it's north of Mongolia, right? Historically part of Mongolia. So there's parts of Mongolia that have been gobbled up by the USSR, which are now part of Russia, and there's a big chunk of Mongolia that's been gobbled up by the Chinese, which they call Inner Mongolia. The original Mongolia was much larger than today's Mongolia. First of all, understand that. Now, Tuva Republic became voluntarily part of USSR 1944. Okay. I'm not very clear about the history of Tuva, but okay. Now, the question really that you're really asking is, does China even have the legs to reach the Arctic and Greenland? So the Chinese have ships. They have ships. There's a specific kind of ship called the icebreaker. The Chinese have icebreakers. The Chinese are very ambitious. Unlike India, the Chinese are very ambitious. So they have the technology to operate in the Arctic or the Antarctic or in the Greenland region with all the fjords and whatnot. If you're traveling from, let's say, London to New York or London to the US, you're gonna fly over Greenland. And if you're not asleep and if you look out the window, you're gonna see the fjords and whatnot of Greenland. So if you're doing that, I would recommend take a look at Greenland. As long it's still Danish territory. Now, the Chinese have the vessels, the ships, the icebreakers that that can operate in the region. The Arctic region. So China does have the legs. The Chinese submarines, can they reach there? Technically, Chinese nuclear submarines could make forays into the Arctic region, potentially reach Greenland. But I'm not sure the Chinese are risking that at this point in time. But I've never heard of Chinese submarines in the Atlantic, for example, North Atlantic, South Atlantic, wherever. I haven't heard of that. The Chinese are focusing on the Pacific right now. That's the region the Chinese want to enter. Right now, they are being constrained by the three island chains, and that's their major focus right now, not the Atlantic. So so I know why you're asking this, because President Trump keeps saying that if the US doesn't take Greenland, then the Chinese and Russians will take over. Well, that's it's nice to say, but the Chinese really they technically, hypothetically, can indeed reach Greenland. I mean, send a ship to Greenland or a few ships to Greenland. The Chinese can't really do a thing about taking over Greenland. I mean, not a chance. Not a chance. My opinion on India's recent focus on submarines, good to see. I mean, how many more submarines are we buying or manufacturing? I'm not sure. Look, a nation of India's size, which keeps on sloganeering that the Indian Ocean is our strategic backyard. If you keep on sloganeering that the Indian Ocean is your strategic backyard, you need at least 50 submarines. Where are those? We have how many operational submarines? 15, 16, 7, less than 20. How many submarines does India operate? Let's see. One second, not this. How many submarines does India currently operate? How many submarines does India operate as of today? 17 to 19, right? Not even 20. I mean, if India takes itself seriously as a serious nation, India should have at least 50 submarines. So I'm not sure what India's recent focus is. I've heard of some German involvement or whatever. Buy 3 from France, 4 from Germany, 12 from God knows what. make your own submarines. The Chinese, that's what they do. The That's what you have to do. So anyway, it seems that we are building like 50 ships right now, which is extremely welcome from my perspective. But we need to focus more on submarines for sure. Bhaskar Bandit says NASA data 2019 said that the Earth is greener than in the last 5,000 years. We are indeed killing the planet, but are there not vested interests in hyping carbon, taxing people like in the EU, and the pure carbon is bad debate is not that big of a deal? Look, yeah, there's this entire hype about climate change, um, and so much more. There are definitely major issues. I mean, the amount of plastic we have dumped into the oceans, it's a tremendous issue. I mean, if you are a fish eating culture, you're consuming plastic along with the fish. If you eat a lot of seafood, you're consuming microplastic with that. That's gonna infiltrate your entire system inside, right? You're gonna have microplastics in your tissues all over the place, in your children's tissues. Um, that's a big issue. Overfishing is a massive issue. The Chinese overfishing fleets all over the place. They go into the Pacific and whatnot, Atlantic, South American coast, and they just decimate the fish stocks over there. The Chinese do that, don't they? That's obviously a big issue. So maybe the planet is greener potentially than in the last 5 years, but what are we doing to the oceans? That's a major problem. If you fly over India, if you are somebody who flies once in a while, commercial aircraft, take off from any major Indian city and look out. What you see is frightening. I took multiple flights recently in the past few weeks out of Delhi, in and out of Delhi. Delhi, Mumbai, Delhi, Mumbai. I mean, you take off from Delhi, the moment the aircraft takes off, you can't see a thing outside. And it's not fog. It's hydrocarbons, vaporized hydrocarbons, smog. I mean, the people who live in that part of India, it's like you're smoking a cigarette a minute. That's how it is. Right? And when you land in a place like Mumbai, once again, you can see the haze all over the place. So clearly, there are issues. The Chinese also have this issue. They also have a tremendous amount of pollution. They've somehow freed Beijing from it. They've freed the major cities from it. But you go to the interior parts of China, you go to Shenzhen, go to all those commercial hubs and all, industrial hubs, tremendous pollution. Right? So pollution is a big issue. And obviously, we are putting out carbon into the atmosphere. That is going to obviously have an effect on climate change. Climate change has always been around. It's a natural phenomenon, but now there's a human factor to it. So these problems are indeed a thing. We are indeed harming the planet, damaging the planet. We're doing a lot. That's terrible. Maybe the earth is greener than in the last 5,000 years. Maybe that's possible. But we are doing a tremendous amount of harm and damage to the planet. And the damage accumulates, right? And it's the future generations of humans that are going to pay more of a price than we are paying. We are stewards, we are custodians of the planet. It's not like we have to destroy it and use it up right now in this current lifetime. It's something that has to be, a good home for humanity for centuries, thousands of years. But obviously, like you said, there are vested interests who are hyping, carbon, like you say, carbon tax in the EU and all. The EU has become overly bureaucratic. Everything is super bureaucratic. There's too much red tape. There's too much procedure. There's all kinds of unnecessary things like carbon tax and whatnot. They're shutting down nuclear power plants and starting coal power plants. What are they doing? I just don't get it. So, there's nuance to this. There is good, there is bad, there's truth, there is some propaganda, and so on. There's nuance. Vivek Singh says, considering the US has a heavy influence on the EU, can they twist the Rafale deal? Maybe P75I in any way to motivate India in their camp? Your opinions? What is this is a submarine thing, right? The P75I. This is a submarine program. P75I project. What is that? It's a significant Indian 6 advanced blah blah blah. and it's going to involve Mazagon Docks shipbuilders. And RFP has been issued with ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems as a key, and Mazagon Dock as the key players, and so on. Okay, so ThyssenKrupp is a German company, and if this goes ahead, if the deal is signed, then we will now have six German submarines, or submarines that will have German design and technology that will be built in Mazagon Docks, Mumbai. So Germany, German technology, German submarine, right? That's Germany. Germany is a nation that has been under permanent US military occupation since 1945. It is under US military occupation. Germany is a US vassal. It's a US asset. It's controlled by the US. There's nothing the Germans do that can that ever goes against US interests. Then you have France, the Rafale, and the Scorpion submarines as well. Now the Scorpions are done. They've been built. They're out in the oceans, but the Rafale deal, right? The Rafale deal hasn't been signed again. Once again, the Rafale deal hasn't been finalized. The 114 Rafales or whatever, it's still being negotiated. India will obviously insist that the Rafales be built in India, not just assembled in India, but even the spare parts, components, and so on be built in India itself, and a significant amount of Indian indigenous components should be there. And I'm not sure about the source code access or not, but the mission computer, we should be able to access it and integrate Indian weaponry with it, and so on. So it's still a work in progress. But let's say the Rafale deal is signed and the ThyssenKrupp submarine deal is signed, the P-75I thing. Then you have the situation where India is acquiring submarines from Germany and fighter planes from France. Germany is completely under US control. So the US can obviously, do something about that deal. We have this deal with the Americans for the supply of F-414 General Electric fighter jet engines. And the Americans have been dragging their feet over that. We've signed the deal, we've paid the money, but they're not delivering the jet engines. So they can make the Germans also delay things if they want, the Americans. No question about it. What about France? France is a tougher nut to crack for the US. The Americans don't occupy France militarily. The US and French intelligence agencies see each other as adversaries. Okay? France has a quasi-independent, semi-independent foreign policy. They have their own nuclear deterrent. So France is more of an independent actor than Germany. Germany, zero sovereignty, zero independence. France, maybe 30-40% sovereignty and independence, not 100%. So the French will be harder for the US to influence. Germany will do whatever the Americans tell them. So obviously this can be an issue in the future, and India will have to consider these things. Keep this in mind. What's the alternative? Make your own submarines, build your own submarines. Or get submarines from Russia, for example, or maybe get Sukhois from Russia instead of the Rafale. So there's plenty of options, and the government is going to have to take a call on these matters. Shankar 3487 says, Jai Somnath. Why is there sudden mushroom growth of influencers on Instagram and YouTube showing India in bad light in China, CCP and West instigate youth to do like Nepal and India against government? It seems planned. You see, when you have platforms that are not indigenous, then those platforms can be used against you. If India had an Indian version of YouTube, an Indian platform, right, that would be as popular as the American YouTube, then you would have full control over what happens on it, right? And then foreign countries would find it much harder to have such influencers and paid spokespersons maligning India on the platform. So if you have your own platforms, you can control these things and you can weed such people out, ban them, block them, whatever. The Americans do it all the time, right? So India could do that. But India doesn't have any of that. India is not a digitally, technologically sovereign nation. India is a geopolitically sovereign nation in terms of economy and military and territory and so on and so forth. But digital sovereignty, India doesn't have it. India is not digitally or technologically sovereign. India is digitally and technologically beholden, vassalized by the West, right? So you have this complete penetration of India by the foreign platforms, mainly the American platforms. India has banned TikTok, okay, but you have all the American platforms that have penetrated the length and the breadth of India, in the minds of Indians. So then it's obviously very possible that you will have, from time to time, or depending on what's going on, a sudden upsurge of the so-called influencers who suddenly become very popular, gain millions of followers, and they show India in a certain kind of light, right? They'll instigate people to do maybe Nepal kind of thing, or they may show the Indian government. They may claim that the Indian government is incompetent, and so on and so forth. There are so many such examples. We don't need to take the names. It's because these are foreign platforms, so they can be weaponized against India. Somsher Limbu. Well, Somsher ji, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. PP5K1 says US puppet regime Iran or current regime Iran succeeds with nuclear bombs. Which scenario is more manageable for India? You see, a US puppet government in Tehran is a nightmare for India, because that puppet government in Tehran will be pro-Pakistan. It's going to give Pakistan the strategic autonomy and the strategic depth, not the strategic autonomy, but strategic depth that it has always sought in Afghanistan. Pakistan has always sought strategic depth in Afghanistan, but the Taliban has not given them an inch. So that's been a disappointing disaster for Pakistan. But if Iran regime change happens, if there's a pro-US government, a puppet government in Tehran, then Pakistan gets that strategic depth that they seek, not in Afghanistan, but in Iran, in the most unexpected quarters. So, what is the better alternative for India? A pro-Pakistan Iran or an anti-Pakistan Iran? Clearly an anti-Pakistan Iran. The current Iranian government is no friend of Pakistan. They know that Pakistan is a US asset. They deeply, deeply distrust Pakistan. They have even launched missile strikes in Pakistan in the past. So that is the current Iranian government. That is a much better scenario for India than a pro-US vassalized government in Tehran. That will be not good for India. Brown Leprechaun says, how could the painter achieve whatever he could? The painter, Shri, not Shri, we don't call him Shri. The painter as in Adolf Hitler, right? How could he achieve whatever he could? Well, he was clearly a very capable person. He was a very charismatic person. He could enthrall crowds. He could convince crowds that he was the right person for restoring Germany's honor and pride and position in the world. And after he came to power through that charisma and through the political means, he actually implemented the things he had promised. He shored up Germany's economy. He boosted Germany's economy. He brought about a complete revival, complete U-turn in Germany economically. He made Germany a major industrial power all over again. He made Germany a massively powerful military power. And then he went ahead and expanded outwards and conquered territory. So he was a very capable man. I'm not saying he was a great man. He was super evil, of course. He was a monster, no question about it, Adolf Hitler. But he was a very capable monster. He was a very capable evil person. That's why. Ritik Pawar says, why is geopolitics so addictive? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not addicted to geopolitics. I simply interpret geopolitics for all of you. And is it addictive? Well, it's generally entertainment that's addictive. Do you find geopolitics entertaining? Is that so? I'm not sure. So I can't really answer why you find geopolitics addictive. Maybe you can answer it. But it's obviously something that is at the center of what's happening in the world. Geopolitics is all about, the evolving world order. Who are the major players? What do they seek? And how are they going about acquiring what they seek? It's all about the unfolding of history in real time in front of our eyes. And it's obviously what determines the future of the world. So obviously it's of the greatest interest. And maybe that's why many people find geopolitics so interesting today. It's very interesting that in 2021, the word geopolitics did not exist in the Indian consciousness. You had these experts who were well versed in international relations, and they used to call themselves strategic affairs experts. And I think the word geopolitics entered the Indian lexicon in 2021 when I did this podcast with Ranveer Alabadia, the first geopolitics podcast. And now geopolitics is all across the board. I think I can claim a little bit of credit for that. And of course, now there are 3 million geopolitics experts in India. You better be careful about that. Okay, I'll tell you that. Okay. V for Valor says, tell us about Indian Navy's standing in underwater UUVs. Uh, UUVs is those underwater drones, right? What's the full form? Let me just double check that. UUV. UUV. Unmanned underwater vehicle, a robotic submersible that operates without a human on board, and so on. Yeah. So it's an unmanned underwater vehicle, unmanned submersible drone, you could say. That's a UUV. What's the Indian Navy standing on this? I'm not sure really. This is something obviously you will keep under cover. You'll not talk a lot about. Well, I have kind of heard that we have decent UUV capabilities, and we are working on those. Um, but exactly how many UUVs we have and what are their capabilities, how deep can they dive, what is their endurance, and all, I am not very clear about. So yeah, this is something that I don't really have a lot of clarity on. What I've heard is what I've heard only vaguely is that we have good UUV capabilities. How good compared to, let's say, China or the US, I am not sure at all. So can't really answer in great detail. Bhaskar Bandit says, please talk about who Captain James Smith was and what happened at Jamestown. Well, look, I could talk about it here, or I could refer to you to one of my videos. So one second, let me show you. So okay, let's open my channel. Okay, my channel, and we go here. This is the live stream tab. We go to the podcasts tab, and there is this podcast called um, Understanding America. So what are the episodes here? So which is the, yeah, this is the one, right? Episode 4. Was the con man America's founding hero? John Smith. It's not James Smith, it's John Smith. John Smith, Jamestown, Plymouth, Understanding America, episode 4. I will recommend that instead of me answering this question in great detail over here, watch that episode. It is extremely detailed and you will get your answer there. But who was John Smith and so on? Well, John Smith was this Englishman who traveled to the Americas, and he became eventually the leader of the Jamestown colony. And he saved Jamestown from disaster. And he also acted um, as a diplomat. He also engaged in pretty harmless, you could say, gunship diplomacy. Um, and he obviously was very influential. Um, one of the most influential early Americans. So John Smith probably was the first American, right? And what happened in Jamestown is very uncomfortable. The Americans don't like to they don't want to recognize Jamestown as the first European colony in the Americas. They want to give Plymouth that honor. But Jamestown was the first European colony in America, and it was a disaster. You had massacres, you had violence, you had atrocities, you had cannibalism, European upon European cannibalism, whatnot. Right? It was absolute disaster. So yeah, watch the episode if you want to know the details. Abhinav Kulkarni says, does the deep state have multiple factions? I don't know. The deep state is something we can only speculate about. I am not aware of what the deep state is and who are the members and what factions are there. I can't say. I can't say, sir. I wish I could, but I can't. Right? No one knows what the deep state is, how many people are part of the deep state, what their nationalities are, what their identities are, and so on. No one knows this. It's all speculation. But it's if you were to look at it intelligently, then it makes sense that something like that does exist. All right. Okay, Shankara says, Jai Somnath, Jai Somnath. Did I not answer this question? I think I answered this question just a while ago. So I think it's a duplicated question for some reason, but I just answered it. So yeah, all right. Rahul AK says, on a sliding scale of Islamization, how would you place the various Islamic nations, include ISIS and India too? I don't speak about these matters. Yeah, these are pretty inflammatory, etc. matters and pretty controversial matters, and I like to stay out of. I'm in anyway. You know, some of the stuff I say is pretty controversial. I don't want to be involved in every potential controversy in the world, so I'll stay out of this. I am anyway not well versed with Islam. I'm no expert in Islam, and I don't study the extent of Islamization in various countries and all. So yeah, probably I'm not the right person to answer this question. I'm sure there are many other people who are experts in Islam and Islamic nations and all. I'm sure they would do a much better job than me at answering this question. So all right. Rudra says, studying for JEE, but can't see the point of devoting 12 to 14 hours studying, sacrificing sports and recreational activities and teen years, kind of. I feel you, my friend. Rudra, I feel you. So you're a teenager. You have to, somebody wants you to become an IIT engineer or whatever, enter the IIT. But then you're going to study 12 to 14 hours a day, slave away, neglecting your health, neglecting sports, no recreation, wake up, eat, study, go back to sleep, nothing else. I mean, and at the end of the day, what's the outcome? You perhaps get admission into one of the IITs. Then what? You go and study another 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. Then you get what? Whether BTech, MTech, whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, what do you get? You get a job somewhere, right? Maybe a good package and all. And then you work. So it's like, it's just work from now onwards. And that's not how life is supposed to be, right? Life is supposed to have some balance. You should have the good with the bad. I mean, sure, work is important. Work is necessary. Everybody has to work. But there has to be something beyond work as well. And by the time you're a teen, this is what is foisted upon you. And I get it. I totally get it. I completely get it. I feel you, my friend. So you've got to decide what is best for you. What's best for your life. Okay. So let's say you don't want to do this. Let's say you don't want to get into the IIT. Then you need to have a plan B, plan C, plan D. 3 other alternatives for your career, which are going to be good alternatives for you. And ideally, the career you take should be something that excites you. So let's say you don't see the point of doing this. Then come up with at least 3 alternatives for a career. Let's say no IIT. Something else. A, plan B, plan C. And these should be convincingly good alternatives. So, for example, if your parents are pressurizing you into studying 12 to 14 hours a day for the JEE, then maybe you could offer these 3 alternative paths to your parents and say that, you know what, these 3 are also equally great, maybe better. And these excite me more than the IIT. I may study 12 hours a day, but maybe my mind won't be there or my heart won't be there in the studies. And even after studying 12, 14 hours a day, maybe I will not do well. Then what happens? Waste of time. So, you need to be strategic about this. So, Rudra, all the best. All the best, sir. Do well. Fields Strongband says, came across a video on the Great Lakes today. The US hit the geography luck jackpot in 100 ways, didn't they? Can you throw some light on it? Geopolitical advantage of the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes. Yeah, that's the Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Superior, and so on and so forth. Let's see the map, right? We have Mary here who was watching a while ago. She lives not far from the Great Lakes. Minneapolis. So look, these are the Great Lakes. Here. Which are the Great Lakes? This is Lake Ontario. This is Lake Erie. This is Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. That's Hudson Bay. What do we have here? That's Lake Winnipeg. It's not part of the Great Lakes as far as I understand. Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. These are the Great Lakes. These are massive, massive bodies of water. I mean, if we were to, go from Chicago all the way to the northern part of Lake Michigan, that's about 500 kilometers. And how wide is this? So if you were to measure the width over here, it's about 100 kilometers. Some pretty massive lakes, almost like little oceans, pocket oceans, massive. If you were to compare it with something like, let's say, Lac Léman in Switzerland. So if you look at Lac Léman, how wide is it at the widest point? Let's say roughly widest point. It's just 13 kilometers. It's tiny compared to the Great Lakes. If you were to do a straight line from Nyon to Montreux, it would be about what? 50 kilometers. Tiny, tiny, minuscule compared to the Great Lakes. So the Great Lakes are massive. And obviously you could do a lot of, I don't know, fishing. I suppose you could do some fishing there. And perhaps the lakes could be rich in resources. I've read in the past about Native Americans who were mining the Great Lakes region for copper and whatnot several thousand years ago. So yeah, there are multiple advantages of having this kind of geographical feature, the Great Lakes. One could be fishing, the other could be perhaps natural resources, and so on. I'm not sure about geopolitical advantages, but yeah, it's a fascinating natural feature. Rahul AK says, SAR subs crossed 950k, ban lifted. I don't know. Let's hope for the best, I suppose. I mean, the channel had been stuck below 950. It touched 950 during Operation Sindoor. Then it rapidly came down to 948, and then it kept on fluctuating 948, 949 for like months and months and months. Now it's crossed 950k. So clearly that situation where from May all the way to December, January, it's less than 950k. Clearly that's unnatural, right? Clearly. I mean, doesn't make sense considering the past history of the channel. So let's see, whatever. It's not something I worry about. It's not something I can control. So I'm cool with it, this way or the other, whichever way. No issues. Okay, YT user 7866 says 67. Okay. I think an average Indian high school kid is smarter than an American kid, but these changes in college, especially research, where do you think lies the issue? Look, even I don't know if who's smarter, who's not. Overall, all human beings have a reasonable amount of intelligence. Let's assume the Indian kid and the American kid, on average, have the same amount of intelligence. Let's say, okay. The changes in college, especially research, where's the issue? The education system is the issue. The education system in India is trash. It is garbage. It is rotten. Okay. And look, I can once again give you a long lecture about the education system, or I can point you in the right direction, which will answer your question. Where is the issue, right? Where's the issue? Why do Indians end up the way that they do? Bereft of the skill of critical thinking. Indians can't think critically. Indians have all these problems, right? So we go to my channel. We go to the live tab. We have a live show going on right now. We go to the oldest live shows, Ask Abhijit 1 to 3, and here we have these episodes. Ask Abhijit 28, Education and India's Future. Ask Abhijit 30, once again, Education System Problem, Solutions and the Way Forward, and 31. So I would say watch episode 30, in which I have spoken about the problems in the education system and what are the solutions and what's the way forward. Because see, look, everybody complains in the world about this problem, that problem. But my point of view is that if you complain about problems, you should also give solutions, otherwise shut up. If you can't offer solutions, then don't complain about problems. So I have pointed out all the problems and I have given the solutions to those problems. What kind of reforms need to be enacted in the Indian education system? That's episode 30 of Ask Abhijit. Also watch episode 28 and 31. If you watch those three, you will know exactly what the problem is, right? I mean, the education system is designed to keep Indians stupid or to make Indians stupid. When you're born as a kid, you are full of curiosity. You're full of this boundless interest in all the mysteries of the world. You want to know everything. And how do you learn things? You learn by asking questions. But in the Indian education system, you're not allowed to ask questions. If you ask questions, you're blacklisted. You are a troublemaker. You ask questions. Shut up, keep quiet. You're supposed to answer questions. The teachers are supposed to ask questions. That's not how you learn. That's how you become stupid. The Indian education system is all about obedience. What kind of kid do Indian teachers like the best? The obedient kids, not the kids who ask questions. If you're obedient, if you are a sheep, they like you. If you're not that, they hate you. Right? Guess what kind of kid I was. Yeah. And so on. So watch those episodes. You will get your answers, sir. Right, next. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, I recently came to know about the city of London inside London. Any details? Is it a country inside a country like the Vatican? I don't know about this. I've heard something about the city of London or whatever it is. I haven't gone into any of these details. So I am not aware of the city of London inside London. I am sorry. I don't know about this. Maybe I should do some research, and find out if it's really something. Is it just some kind of tall tale? I don't know at this point. So I don't know the answer at this point. Sorry. Richest Pakistani says, Paijan, what's your opinion on NCM 2025 private bill? What is that? NCM 2025 private bill. Paijan, let me see what this is. I'm not aware of it. NCM 2025 private bill. NCM 2025. What is this? National Commission for Men bill. Private members bill introduced in the Rajya Sabha by whoever to establish a statutory body under the Ministry of Law and Justice to address issues related to men's rights, welfare, and mental health in India. To create a dedicated commission like the NCW to address grievances such as forced harassment cases, misuse of laws, family disputes, workplace harassment against men. It's a private members bill. The bill has sparked significant national debate. We need supporters highlighting the need for gender-neutral laws, addressing high rates of male suicide, and critics will raise concerns about the potential to weaken existing protections for women, and so on. What's my opinion? I will have to study this in detail to actually voice a proper opinion. But my point is, what do I believe in about this matter? Clearly, it looks like men are being victimized in India. India is following in the footsteps of the US. Nari Shakti. I mean, no issue with Nari Shakti. Everybody should have Shakti. Nari as well as Nar both should have Shakti. Laws should be gender neutral. Okay? And there's no need to emphasize the Shakti of one gender or another. Let everybody have equal rights, equal privileges, equal duties. Laws should be neutral. That's what I believe in. And since that's not the case, maybe you should have this NCM private bill. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. Can't say really. Pradeep Kumar Roy says favorite Shakespeare play. Okay, favorite Shakespeare play. That brings me to a whole different world. I read Shakespeare as a kid, as a teen or something. Probably one of the dark ones, one of the darker Shakespeare plays is obviously Duncan. Not Duncan. What's it called? The murder of Duncan by who murders Duncan? Lady Macbeth. Macbeth, right? Yeah, the forest comes marching and so on and so forth. Be bloody, bold, and resolute. The three witches. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty dark one. Macbeth. There's the Merchant of Venice. There's the Midsummer Night's Dream, and so on. I don't have any specific favorite plays. Some of these are pretty nice, actually. Really interesting stories. Midsummer Night's Dream, A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Merchant of Venice, Romeo and Juliet. Pretty tragic stuff. Not my favorite. The Merchant of Venice again, not one of my favorites. The dark one, Macbeth, interesting. Hamlet, again, kind of dark. Supernatural stuff, ghosts and whatnot. Skull. Yeah, there's plenty of interesting plays for sure. But I don't have one specific favorite play. I can think of a bunch of plays that I enjoyed. Okay, Pradeep Kumar Roy says, is Trump bluffing about Greenland to scare and force the Europeans to do more in Ukraine? Europe is already a vassal of the US. This doesn't make sense. No, Trump is not bluffing about Ukraine, about Greenland. What he is doing is not with, it's not like he has the objective of scaring the Europeans and forcing them to do more in Ukraine. No, he wants a big pound of flesh. We just spoke about the Merchant of Venice, right? The Merchant of Venice? Othello is different. The Merchant of Venice. Shylock, the pound of flesh. Yeah. So Trump actually wants Greenland and is going to get it. This is not about scaring them or the Europeans or forcing them to do something that he wants. This is about actually acquiring Greenland, and he's going to do it. It's going to happen. It's already done, essentially. It's a fait accompli. The only question is, how does it get done? What are the terms of the transfer? That's all. How much does the US pay for this? That's all. YT user says, I see Indians blaming current Britishers for our misery and give back the stolen goods. Do you think it's right to blame the current generation people for the deeds of their forefathers? They just born there. You can't really blame someone for the sins of their father or their forefathers. You can't. Of course, there'll be some in England, some British English people who will say, where's James? Where's James, bro? Hey, James, you there? There'll be some English people, British people, who will say that, who will glorify what their ancestors did. And those are the annoying ones. But to be very fair, you can't blame today's British citizens for what their ancestors did to India. You can't. Those who glorify that, those who revel in all of that, those are nasty people, and obviously those are annoying. But well, they're not committing any crimes, are they? So yeah, I agree with you. They were just born there, and they did not personally do any of the atrocities, the genocide, the hundreds of artificial famines, and the plunder of probably $100 trillion worth of today's dollars and so on. They didn't do it. They're simply enjoying the proceeds of that, the outcome of that. So yeah. Okay. 1999 Nirupam says, last episode, democracy fails India. Then what's the solution? Democracy is failing India, of course. Democracy is the biggest bane of India. What's the solution? What's the opposite of democracy? That's the solution. So the opposite of democracy is dictatorship, right? Now, am I advocating for dictatorship? Am I advocating for Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Saddam Hussein? No, I'm not advocating for that. I'm advocating for the system that has served India so well for thousands of years. That is either monarchy or the imperial system. The question is, who becomes the monarch? Who becomes the emperor? The best should become the emperor, right? So yeah, it's very theoretical what I'm saying right now. If I were to actually implement, if one were to actually implement an imperial system, go back to the monarchy system, imperial system, who do you make the emperor? Who becomes the emperor, right? That's a big question. I don't have an answer to that right now. But our emperors, our kings, they served India far better than today's politicians do. And they were dictators. They were not elected democratically. Was Lord Krishna, the king of Dwarka, elected democratically? He was a dictator, wasn't he? Who was King Dasharath? Was he elected democratically? Did he install his son Bharat democratically? Bharat waited for his brother, Sri Ram. Then Sri Ram becomes the king of Ayodhya. Was he democratically elected the king of Ayodhya? But isn't he one of the greatest human beings who ever lived? Right? So, the solution obviously is what has worked well for India for thousands of years. But how do we transition from this rotten system to that solution, and who do we make the emperor's own? That is a very complicated issue, clearly. Ivansh says, it might sound naive, but why can't the vassals just stop being host to the American bases? It's a good question. That's actually not a naive question. It's a good question. So how can the Americans even coerce them into being vassals? Why can't Germany, for example, just say, get out? So what you do is, when you vassalize a country, You can vassalize a country in multiple ways. One of the ways is to simply occupy it militarily. Look at Japan. In Japan, you have more than 130 permanent US military bases, tens of thousands of American troops. Now, if Japan says get out, they'll have guns pointed at their heads. Right? There are enough American soldiers in Japan to physically prevent the Japanese from revolting. Japan can't revolt. There's too many American soldiers and too much American military equipment in Japan. There's a reason why they are there, to prevent Japan from ever rebelling. Okay? Now, it's not enough to simply occupy the country by force like the Americans do. You have to completely transform the governance system. See, when the British occupied India, what did they do? They didn't simply occupy India and brutalize Indians. They changed everything. They changed the systems. They destroyed the industrial system of India. They deindustrialized India, and then they allowed certain industries to exist, which would be controlled by the British. By that, they controlled the Indian economy. Then they destroyed the Indian education system and imposed a foreign education system upon India that started brainwashing Indians. The current crop of Indians with this deep inferiority complex are a consequence of that. Then they changed the entire judiciary system of India, the entire governance system of India. Everything they changed. So today, without the British systems, India can't work. India is still colonized. Similarly, the Americans have done that in Japan. And they have penetrated the Japanese society to such an extent that they have prevented any real leader from emerging. All the leaders who emerge, they are temporary leaders. How many prime ministers can you think of who have been Japanese prime ministers? You currently have Madame Takeichi, right? Who's the prime minister? She became the prime minister a few months ago. Before that, who was it? I can't remember the name. I can only think of one proper prime minister, that is Shinzo Abe. And we know what happened to him. Germany, you have some guy who's the chancellor or some lady who's the chancellor. What do they do? Nothing. So you render the country hollow. You hollow out its leadership. You ensure no real leaders emerge. And you prop up false leaders. So by doing all these things, you prevent a nation from ever rising. And you make that nation completely dependent on you. All these false leaders you prop up, you make them beholden to you in 75 different ways. Right? And the objective is that you ensure they will never stand against you. So that's how you do it. That's how you properly vassalize a country. And then the Germans, for example, had this concept of the Übermensch, the master race. The German people are the superior race, right? The Aryan race, the term they stole from us. So if the Germans had this concept of the Germans being the superior race, let us dilute the race. Bring in millions of Turks and people from certain countries who are from a different race, have them race mix, let's say. That's a term some people use. And then dilute the race. The race no longer exists. So then the Germans no longer have the incentive to claim that we are a superior race or whatever. So that way Germany can never rise again, the way it did in the 1940s, the 1930s, right? So that's how we do it. Amisha says, 1,000 years of Somnath's resilience, the eternal story of India's resilience. Today's divided Hindu society can learn a lot from Somnath. Well, Somnath is sadly a cautionary tale for us today. If you go to Somnath today, Veraval, Saurashtra, you will see a Somnath temple there. But it's not the original Somnath temple. It's the recently rebuilt Somnath temple. Nearby, there is this place where you have the ruins, some of the ruins of the original Somnath temple. Right? The one that was, there have been multiple Somnath temples that have been destroyed by barbarians. There was one that was destroyed 1,000 years ago, 1026 AD, right? It's been 1,000 years now. And then there was another one that was destroyed a couple of centuries later. Then there was one that was destroyed by Aurangzeb. So every time the barbarians destroyed it, we rebuilt it. But after Aurangzeb's destruction of the temple, a mosque was installed on top of it. Right? And it was not rebuilt until the 20th century. So for like 200 years, the temple did not essentially exist or function. So yeah, 1,000 years of Somnath's resilience kind of mirrors the ups and downs India's society has faced, has had to suffer, and the plight of Somnath mirrors the plight over time of India's civilization. So today you have a Somnath temple that kind of mirrors the kind of society we have in India today. The original Somnath temples, okay, they were incredibly beautifully carved with human figures and whatnot. If you see today's Somnath temple, it's made of sandstone. There are no carved human figures on it. It's more plain. Let's take a look at Somnath today, right? Somnath temple. If you look at the walls of today's Somnath temple, walls. I mean, you have some carvings, I suppose, but they are nothing compared to the carvings we used to have in the past. I mean, I have visited this Somnath temple. I'm not sure that I've seen this. Mostly, if you look at the temple, you don't see too much of carvings or whatever. Obviously, it's a nice piece of architecture and so on, but it doesn't feel like the great temple it used to be. There are temples in the region. There are older temples, smaller ones that feel more holy somehow. So it will take time for this temple to evoke that feeling of being this great ancient site. So what can our divided society learn from Somnath? Yeah, I mean, learn the history. It's a testament to what we have undergone as a civilization, beaten down so many times, and we still stood up and still standing, I suppose, right? That's the story it tells us. Okay. The question is, apparently Iran jammed Starlink. Rumor or true? Can't say for sure, but it looks like there are reports coming out from Iran that you know Iran has been able to GPS spoof or whatever, and make Starlink essentially very hard to operate. Barely able to connect to Starlink if you have the hardware, and the speeds are very, very low. So it looks like the Iranians have been able to successfully at least disrupt Starlink operations in Iran and make Starlink very hard to operate. Looks like that, but I can't say for sure. Munna Bhaiya says, difference between Indian and Jewish politician mindset in the US. Um, Indian origin politicians and Jewish origin politicians in the US. The Jewish origin politicians are all united, right? And they are all unwavering in their support for Israel and Israel's interests. I'm not saying they are anti-US interests, but they also support Israel. In the case of Indian politicians, the Indian community is divided in India, in the US, and most of them don't support India. Yeah, Um and you have this Pramila Jayapal who is like kind of anti-India. Um, you have another guy. I'm not sure he's a politician, Preet Bharara, who was behind the Devyani Khobra Gare incident, right? That guy, Preet Bharara. So he's definitely very anti-India. So there are many Indian origin politicians in the US who are pretty much anti-India, and yeah, so that's a big difference, right? Clearly. 1999, Nirupam says India's semiconductor push and startup space tech, India and global impact. India's semiconductor push. So we have this major semiconductor mission that's going on right now, and we are manufacturing now chips of a certain quality. Probably it will take us a decade or decade and a half to be able to manufacture the highest quality chips in the world. Cutting edge chips. It For that we will need our own lithography machines. See, you can design chips, okay? So when we talk about chips, CPUs, GPUs, all that, what is it like? It is a silicon wafer on top of which you have all these incredibly intricate and detailed circuits that are etched on top of them, on top of the silicon wafer. And So first you have to have a silicon wafer. That's not very hard to have. Okay, it's just sand. Then you have the chip design. That's another component of the whole process, chip design. So much of the chip designing happens in India. Indians are some of the best chip designers. Very complex chips can be designed. So chip design, you need to have the ability to design chips. Indians have that. So we have sand, we have the silicon wafers, we have the chip design capabilities. The third thing is how to take this chip design, that is an abstract thing, it's a concept, and make it a physical reality on this tiny silicon wafer. For that, you need a certain kind of technology called photolithography machines. And there's very few nations in the world that have this technology. One is the Netherlands. They have this company called ASML that manufactures photolithography machines. Without these machines, you can't manufacture cutting edge chips. And then you have China that is trying to develop the same technology. They have Chinese origin engineers who have worked in ASML who are now trying to replicate the technology for China. So the Chinese are super ambitious. Does India have photolithography machines? I'm not sure. So we will need the technology if we want to be a major player in semiconductors. Let's see. Does India have photolithography machines? Yes, India does have photolithography capabilities, mainly R&D, older nodes. IIT Mandi, IIT Bombay working on advanced photoresistance systems with new commercial fabs being built in mature nodes 28 to 90 and nanometers using imported DUV tools aiming to build capacity and so on and so forth, so on and so forth. The Indian semiconductor mission provides support, and global players like ASML are engaging, reports ASML. So we need the help of ASML, which obviously doesn't make us an independent actor in this matter. So India will have to acquire or develop photolithography technology at the same level as ASML if we want to be a uh, globally relevant player in this space. Right now we are essentially taking baby steps, but at least we are doing that. So good to see that. Anan Rafi Mate says, is the AI bubble real? Look, AI is a genuinely transformative technology, no question about that. But obviously, some of the AI companies will be overpriced and all. But is this a bubble? Is it going to burst? Is AI going to end up being a mirage? Not quite. The AI hype is real. AI is not going to replace all jobs immediately, but AI is going to transform the world. Already, it's transforming the IT sector. I'm not sure if it has disrupted entire sectors and made hundreds, maybe thousands or tens of thousands, millions of jobs redundant. Hasn't happened yet. But AI has transformed the way people work and so on. And AI is a game changer. AI is being used everywhere as a layer in various, whether it's military technology, whether it is various industries and so on. And the combination of AI and robotics is going to be a genuine game changer. And the nation that develops AGI first, it's going to have a massive advantage over other nations. We are probably close to AGI, artificial general intelligence, and artificial super intelligence will be a transformative thing, like a game changer technology. So the AI hype is real, and you can already see how advanced AI has become in just a couple of years. I mean, 2022, 23, the first chat GPT versions were very basic, right? And today they are so much more advanced. So clearly, it's a real thing. It's not just hype, it's real. Sergeant Skylon, good to see you. What is India USA future? India and the US, the relationship is very rocky right now. The US has never imposed as much economic arm twisting or whatever on India since 1947 as it has right now, right? Very rough period of time. And the US, what does it seek from India? The US seeks to vassalize India, and India seeks to remain sovereign. So that is going to be the relationship the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, if India is not vassalized, then probably India will make it. India will become a major power. But the chances are higher that in the next 5 years, India becomes a US vassal. Maybe 60, 65, 70% chances of India becoming a US vassal in the next 5 years. Maybe in the next 2, 3 years. So we'll have to wait and watch. I'm optimistic India doesn't become a US vassal. India does well. But we'll have to see. The chances are higher of India becoming vassalized because the US is just too strong. And India hasn't done the reforms. India hasn't developed the capabilities. It needs to become a genuinely independent contender for global power. Yeah. What reforms has India done past 10, 11, 12 years? Nothing major, nothing transformative, the real thing that needs to happen. So India is on a, let's say, a sticky wicket. Yeah. So it's advantage US. And the probability is higher that India becomes a vassal next 5 years. Let's wait and watch. Okay. ICMBs says, what's your opinion on our neutrality geopolitically? We are not neutral geopolitically. People keep saying, analysts and YouTubers keep saying that India has this non-aligned, stand geopolitically. We are non-aligned. We are neutral. Blah blah blah. That's not the case. We have tried to be strategically autonomous, which means multi-engagement, not non-engagement, not non-alignment, but multi-engagement, multi-alignment. And that's been the policy of India the past 10 years or so. And I approve of that. I agree that that is the right policy for India. We are not neutral. We haven't been neutral. We haven't stayed out of things. We have participated in things. We have kind of been a player, let's say, in various geopolitical, events. I mean, we are not exactly neutral when it comes to Ukraine. We are engaging with Russia. We are buying Russian oil. We have been buying Russian oil since 2022. And we have refused to condemn the Russian actions. And that's been seen by the US and Western nations as not neutral at all, because it is not neutral. So we aren't neutral. We have our own interests and we are pursuing those interests. In the past, we did not. Now we are. So it's very different. Godliness says, purely based on science, without any religious, traditional, or cultural aspect, what kind of food should an adult, especially men, eat and why? You should eat a balanced diet. You should have adequate fiber, because fiber makes your digestion good, easy. You should have adequate minerals and vitamins, typically from a plant-based diet. So you have fiber that comes from plants. You have vitamins and minerals and all, and phytonutrients, etc., that should come from plants. Then you need, so that's your fiber and carbohydrates and phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals and so on. That should primarily come from plants, plant-based food. Then you need to have fats and protein. So that generally comes from animal sources. It could be vegetarian animal sources like milk and milk products like cheese and paneer and yogurt and whatnot. Or animal products like meat, right? So you can get fat and protein in copious quantities from meat. If you want to get fat and protein from vegetable products like pulses, that comes with a massive carbohydrate overload. So you want protein that is the leanest protein possible without the lowest. See, there's something called the protein to calorie ratio. How much protein do you get and how many calories do you have to take for it? Your protein to calorie ratio has to be as high as possible. High protein, low calories. So if the higher your protein to calorie ratio it is, the cleaner is your source of protein. So that's what you should aim for, and that typically comes from meat, right? The protein to calorie ratio for pulses is pretty low. There are more calories than protein, So without, forget about religion, philosophy, culture, etc. Just what's the ideal food for men, for adult men? You want what is it say? About 2 grams of protein per pound, or 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, which means essentially 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Let's say you're 70 kilos. So per day you should have 140 grams of protein. Okay. And if you are a reasonably active person, your diet should have daily caloric intake should be about 2,500 or 3,000 calories. And if you're a sedentary person, 2,000 calories, right? So that's the kind of thing. And obviously you should get your vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients from vegetable sources. So that is how it should be, keeping all other cultural, traditional, religious aspects aside. And the cleanest protein sources are animal sources, meat, Meat is the cleanest source of protein. You can get animal protein from milk products also, but that comes with a lot of fat. That increases the caloric load on your body. So at the end of the day, it's up to you. Obviously, religion and culture and all is obviously a major factor in most people's lives. So it's not like I am telling you that this is the best way to be forward. Before you need to decide what's best for you. General Subuthai says the US leads with 71 nuclear submarines. China has 32, and China has now officially overtaken Russia with 28. Where are we? How many nuclear subs does India have? Like 2 or 3? Okay, let's see. Okay, let's ask our friend Google. Google has an AI. Please list the number of nuclear submarines operated by US, China, Russia, India, France, UK. Let's see. What do we get? US 71 roughly, China 32, Russia 25 to 38, UK 10 to 11, France 9 or 10, India 2. Good God. So India is like number 6 in the list. We just have 2 right now. Anyway, we have 2 now, and we are building the submarines on our own. So at least we are taking the baby steps and maybe beyond baby steps. So the US has 71, China 32, Russia is 25 to 28, UK has 10 or 11, France has 9 or 10, India has 2. So we are in the game now. Yes, we are in the game. Let's make more, I suppose. Yep. Okay, Shivansh says, in a hypothetical scenario, if you were to step into Indian politics, which way would you have chosen? Like a technocrat or through typical MP MLA system, and why? Technocrats aren't really politicians. I mean, yeah, you have some ministers who are technocrats, but they simply are tools. They don't really have much power of their own. Yeah, you get elected and you have power in your constituency, but your job is that of a technocrat of overseeing a ministry and typically a technical ministry and so on. And that's why you are there. And because you're a technocrat, you understand the technologies and whatnot. That's why the prime minister appoints you as a minister. And you do the prime minister's bidding and you carry out or whatever is required of you. That's a technocratic, that's the job of a technocrat. And a technocrat is typically a tool of a more powerful politician. If I were to hypothetically step into Indian politics, now it's not like I have any intention whatsoever. No intention whatsoever. Okay, let's be clear about that. A completely hypothetical scenario in a parallel universe, I would not go down the technocratic way. I would go through your, not MLA, I don't know. Definitely not the technocratic way. Probably MP, eventually emperor, because I prefer that system, don't I? It's a completely hypothetical scenario in a parallel universe. I have no intention of ever being anywhere near politics. Okay. Okay. Agniveer says, could the US be acting aggressive against India to push it under the Chinese wing? Seems like all moves done by all actors fit in this theory. So the US is aggressive towards India. How does that push India into the Chinese wing, under the Chinese wing? It essentially, if the US is aggressive against India, it isolates India more than pushes India under the Chinese wing. Because then India has 2 options. Either become an American vassal or a Chinese vassal. The Americans are far, far away. The Chinese are right next door. If you become a Chinese vassal, they'll take territory. That is even worse for India, right? The Chinese are in a position to exploit India more than the Americans, in some senses, especially territorially, which is more visible than the real vassalage, right? So the Americans are not doing this to push India under the Chinese wing. The Americans want to vassalize India. They want to be the overlord of India. They don't want to make the Chinese the overlords of India. They want to be the overlords of India. That's why the US is being aggressive towards India. It's the US is trying to cut off India's options. The US is obviously very capable of doing that. So, right. Gajapati Dev says, your current reading routine, any recent favorite? My current reading routine. I'm not, the past few days, I've not been reading a lot at all. I've been traveling a lot. So it's not like I have any routine. If I am Not traveling, I may read a couple of hours a day. Any recent favorite? I'm not sure what I'm reading right now. I'm reading typically reading two or three things at the same time. So recent favorites. No, I'm reading this book by Robert Caro. Okay. Um, Here's a book recommendation if you want. Robert Caro books. The one I'm reading is this one, The Power Broker. Very interesting book. So, yeah, very interesting. Is it one of my favorites? Well, I'll see if it is after I finish reading it, but pretty interesting. So, okay, Bhaskar Gupta says Pakistan, ISIS, vassal of US good friend of Israel. Then why did Hamas do a meeting in Pakistan, occupied Kashmir with Pakistan, ISIS army in April 2025? There should be enemies. There are no enemies. There are assets and adversaries, right? The US, I mean, look, they've used Al Qaeda, the US, haven't they, against Syria in the past? They've used ISIS. The US uses all tools on the geopolitical chessboard. There is no good friends. There are no friends in geopolitics. There are no enemies in geopolitics. There are temporary allies and temporary adversaries. And these things keep changing. All right. Please understand this about geopolitics. There are no permanent friends. There are no permanent enemies. There are no friends or enemies. All relationships are transient. Some are more transient and some are less transient. India, Russia, it's a more of a stable relationship, long lasting relationship for multiple reasons. But when it comes to Hamas and all, the US has used Hamas also. Qatar, a US asset, hosts Hamas leaders, right? Geopolitics is very complicated. There are no black and white answers and all that. Complicated stuff. Okay. Ansh Divu says, you have said Bharat will keep growing if it doesn't get bogged down in a war. And you have said Ukraine war has helped grow Russia's economy. What's the difference? What's the difference? Well, that's a good question. What's the difference? Yeah, I have said very different things about Bharat and about Russia vis-a-vis war. Right? Right indeed. See, it's like this. If Bharat gets bogged down in a war, let's say with Pakistan, it means that if India gets bogged down in a war with Pakistan that goes on for months, it means that this indicates India is unable to defeat Pakistan militarily and achieve whatever military and political objectives India has, which would indicate this is a scenario where Pakistan has been made more powerful than what it is currently by the Americans or whoever, right? So in that scenario, if Pakistan is almost equal military in military strength with India, then Pakistan will be able to inflict significant damage on India, which will disrupt India's economy. India's economy is supposed to keep growing only if there's no war. But if Pakistan is able to disrupt India's economy by damaging economic assets, like, for example, oil refineries and whatnot, then it is a disaster for India. Then India can't grow. Do you understand? If India gets bogged down in a war with Pakistan, it means Pakistan will be able to damage India, which is horrible for the economy. So that is what I mean. India should not get bogged down in a war. You can fight a war which you can end in like 3 days or 5 days. That's fine with minimal damage. For that, you have to be massively more powerful than your adversaries. That is fine. But don't get embroiled, bogged down in a war. That is going to damage your economy. It may take your GDP growth rate negative, which is a disaster. Now, what about Ukraine and Russia? Has Ukraine been able to damage Russia's economy? It's been able to do some strikes here and there, right? It recently, a few months ago, did Operation Spiderweb, destroyed a few Russian strategic bombers and whatnot. But overall, Ukraine has not been able to damage Russia's infrastructure, economy, or anything to any significant extent because Russia is so vast, and Ukraine lacks the power projection capabilities to damage Russia. And because the war is going on for longer and longer, Russia needs more and more arms, ammunition, munitions, for which you need to set up factories and run the factories, which takes tremendous amount of employment and generates a lot of revenue for Russia. So that actually grows the Russian economy. And the longer the war goes on in Ukraine, the more it drains Europe. which doesn't have Russia's industrial capabilities. So that's why the Ukraine war has actually has made Russia stronger. It has helped grow Russia's economy. But a war that India gets bogged down in, if that scenario happens, it will be damaging for the Indian economy. Please think. That's how it works. Godliness says, I know at least 5 Indians living here in the West. All are earning good and also happy, but far away from families. Reason Indian society relatives made life hell for them for being gay. Can't we accept them? Why shouldn't you accept gay people? Gay people exist, right? And if they exist, then you should accept them. I personally am of the opinion that people who are gay should be accepted just like everybody else. They're not hurting or harming anybody. What they do is their private matter. Let them live. Give them the same dignity as everybody else. I completely oppose, victimizing people because they're gay or whatever. I know gay people. They're perfectly fine, good people. What's wrong with them? I'll not take names, but yeah, this is wrong. And more importantly, this is not Indian culture to victimize somebody for being gay. We have never done that historically for thousands of years. We've never done that. If today we have some people in India who look down upon gay people, that is an un-Indian mindset culturally. It's an Abrahamic mindset. It's not an Indian mindset. Dheeraj Kamath says, the US already has bases in Greenland. Denmark is already their vassal. What's the strategic benefit associated with gaining direct control? Is this just Trump satisfying his ego? Trump wants to be remembered as the biggest, baddest, greatest ever president in US history. The one president who in more than 100 years for the first time expanded American territory, acquired more territory. And a territory as big as Greenland, almost like the Louisiana Purchase, almost like the Alaska Purchase. Huge territory, huge, right? That's one thing. Secondly, Greenland lies in a very strategic location geographically, essentially between Russia and North America. And the US is not concerned about China, but more about Russia. If the Russians launch missiles at the US, if you're sitting in Greenland, you will be the first to notice that. And Greenland has plenty of resources that the Americans want, oil, gas, minerals and whatnot. So multiple reasons why the Americans want to have sovereign control over Greenland, not just have some kind of agreement with Denmark. Okay? That's the deal. And they want to show the world that we are now the supreme overlord of the world and we possess the entire Western Hemisphere. Nobody is allowed to have any kind of say in that. So multiple reasons for that. YT user 7866 says, I've read that when whites left Rhodesia, which they say was the breadbasket of Africa, the natives were not able to survive on their own, and this led to hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. What's my opinion? It's true, but it's not because the black people are inferior to whites. It's because the white people left behind a system which, see, what the white people did is that when they left behind a situation where the black people had no skills, they had no education, they had never been made part of the governance system, so they did not know how to govern a country. The white people left behind a situation where there was no real leadership. It was just chaos. So thugs come to power. Allegedly, Robert Mugabe was a thug, and so on. Right? A pretty nasty person. So they left behind a situation where the native people were simply not equipped to run a country successfully on their own. And this obviously led to all kinds of issues. That's what really happened. It's not like the whites are superior and the blacks are inferior. That's why this happened. That is a very simplistic way of looking at the world. That's not the case. Okay. R. Rarun Rajar says, do you have control on ads on your channel? So many self-proclaimed experts are selling courses and books. Even when I use incognito new PC, I have absolutely no control on what ads are shown by YouTube on the channel. That is entirely YouTube's prerogative. I have no control. Right? Gukukis says, Nehru versus Tsar Bomba. Who will in 1v1? Nehru versus Tsar Bomba. So one is a person, Shri Jawaharlal Nehru ji, the magnificent. The second is a 50 megaton nuclear bomb. I mean, what's the comparison? I'm not sure what you asked me to compare. You can't compare a person with a bomb. You can't. Rahul says, will European tribal wars resume if NATO does? If NATO does? If NATO does what? Look, there's only one thing preventing the European nations from going at each other's throats, and that's the United States. The United States has kept Europe, Western Europe, stable and calm and peaceful the past since 1945. That's what, 80 years now? Yeah, 80 years. The Americans have kept the peace in Western Europe. If the Americans leave Western Europe and stop interfering there, stop controlling the region, the Europeans will go back at each other's throats. So the moment NATO ends and the Americans withdraw from Europe, the European tribal wars will resume. Rishi Barot says, posture check and hydration reminder for everyone. Thank you for the posture check. Yes, in the hydration reminder. If the US Army is so powerful, then what are the checks and balances in place to prevent army chiefs from taking over the US establishment? That's a great question. One thing you can do is make sure there are lots of generals and none of them has too much power. And of course, you have the chief of staffs and all that, the guys, the super generals who report to the president. So you essentially ensure that the army has many generals and none of them has too much power. Let's find out how many generals does the US Army have. How many generals in US Army? How many generals do you have? The US has a statutory cap of 219 active duty general officers, 1 star, 2 stars, 3 star. Capped at 219. So how many do they have right now? How many generals are there? So it's not giving me the exact answer I want. But let's say you have, okay, so you have 219 active duty generals and more than 250 brigadier generals, 1 star, hundreds more in total across all star levels. Right. So what you do is you distribute the power. You diffuse out the power. Diffusion. Don't allow too much power to be held, to be concentrated in the hands of any one person. Right. So yeah, this is a very pertinent question, very important question. You want to ensure that there's no such scenario where there could be a coup in the US, So that's what you do. You ensure nobody becomes too powerful. Keep all the generals, if it's 5-star generals, all the 5-star generals should have the same amount of power. None of them should be more powerful than the other. And you keep an eye on them. If somebody is showing any signs, symptoms or whatever, then you can retire them or whatever. That's what you do. If you just have, let's say, 5 generals in an army, then it becomes very easy for even 3 of them to get together and take over the country. But if you have 219 generals and hundreds more brigadier generals and whatnot, it's so difficult for any kind of coup to happen. So yeah, these are very important things to look into if you are a major power. Ensure that nobody has too much power in the armed forces. Godliness says, behavior of some individuals based on their caste identity, state, or religion, especially from North India, is very disturbing and is becoming dangerous and unlawful. Will we ever have civic sense? I am not sure what you are specifically referring to. Especially from North India, well, I really don't know exactly what you're talking about. Will we ever have civic sense? Civic sense is very easy. Make the punishments certain. If somebody breaks the law or goes on the wrong side of civic sense, make it certain they will be punished and punished harshly. Enforce that. That will immediately transform the civic sense of any country. Go to Singapore today, everybody has impeccable civic sense. 50 years ago, everybody was spitting on the streets and peeing on the walls. What happened? Enforcement, harsh enforcement. That is what conditions people into behaving properly. Pavlovian conditioning, essentially. The Indian government doesn't care about civic sense. The law and order authorities don't care about these things. And that's why we have the situation. Right? And so on. And about this caste thing and all, I have no idea. Sorry. V4 Valor says, hydration and posture reminder. Thank you so much. I shall hydrate myself once this is over. Okay, but thank you for the reminder. Indians outsource security, leadership, even critical thinking. That became fatal for them now. You outsource. See, look, whatever you outsource goes beyond your control, right? That's always a problem. If you outsource technology, we don't have any of our platforms, but we'll use American platforms. That's a big issue when it comes to technological sovereignty. Leadership, I'm not sure if we outsource leadership. Critical thinking, Indians are devoid of critical thinking, not their fault. It's the education system that does that. But these issues, they all add up together and become massive problems for a country, which is why I keep saying India needs reforms, but there is no urgency or even any scope of reforms that one sees. Massive, major reforms, deep-rooted reforms in various sectors in India. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, you mentioned the pound of flesh. Any similarities between Shylock and Trump? Any Israel angle behind Greenland? It's been too long since I read The Merchant of Venice. Portia was the female protagonist. Shylock is the nasty guy who wants the pound of flesh. I don't remember what Shylock was all about. Don't remember the story in great detail. Similarities between Shylock and Trump, I'm not sure if I see too many, actually. Any Israel angle behind Greenland, I don't see that either. I don't see an Israel angle behind Greenland, as far as I can see. Not really. Okay. Echo 942 says, only education. Indian parenting is also trash. You see, my friend, Echo, what did the Indian parents go through? They went through the same trash education system. Several generations of Indians have been put through this garbage, trash, rotten education system. So every generation, the effects are compounding. Do you understand? I don't disagree with you. Many Indian parents are also stupid. They don't know how to be good parents, effective parents to their kids. Why is there so many behavior issues and all? Indians behaving poorly and all? Because the parents encourage such behavior in their kids, and that's why the kids are loud and noisy. And if you're in a flight, they will watch reels, at full volume, not caring about whether other people want to sleep or not or whatever. Parenting is also an issue. But what did the parents undergo? They also went through the same education system. So every new generation, the effects are compounding. That's the problem. So we have to reform the education system, but our fantastic leaders don't seem to think of it as an issue at all. Maybe they think it's a great education system. Maybe it's giving them the kind of citizens they want to rule over. I don't know. Rahul says, how good is EU, Australia for masters in computer science, AI, quantum? Plus, is legal immigration for education or work a good idea, as we'll be playing their game by their rules? Look, I don't know which country is good for what course. I don't look into these things. I don't know. When it comes to computer science, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, quantum mechanics, etc., quantum technologies, right? You're talking about applied stuff, not quantum mechanics, but quantum technologies. I would say the number one place for this would be the United States. EU, I don't know. France generally has a good education system, but Germany has a good education system for sure. So France and Germany are good, but the US is better, obviously. Australia, I'm not sure how good Australia is at cutting edge technologies. I don't know. So all I can tell you is the US is the best place. In the EU, I think France, especially Germany, will be good. Australia, when it comes to computer science, AI, quantum, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I don't keep track of this stuff. It's not my thing, right? So yeah, I can't really answer your question in great detail because I'm not an expert in this matter, right? Education placement and stuff, I have no idea. Legal immigration for education is it a good idea? Will be playing well. Look, what you have to ask yourself is, where will I get a great career? Yeah, where will I be most successful? If it's in a foreign country, well, go for it. Immigrate legally. It's okay. It's fine. Obviously, you will have to play by the rules, but it is the name of the game. You will not get the same opportunities in India as you will get outside India. No question about it. And I highly recommend that if you're a young person, Focus on your own personal growth and development the first 20 years at least of your adult life. From the age of 20 all the way to the age of 40 at least. Focus on yourself. Be selfish. If you have to go abroad for that, I would highly encourage you to do that. Okay. Nirupam says, what reforms would be critical to prevent vassalage? Vassalage is something that will happen or not in the next 3 to 5 years. It's too late for reforms to prevent vassalage. But what reforms does India need is a good question. Education needs to be completely, thoroughly overhauled. Completely. The entire system needs to be dumped into the waste basket. That's how bad the system is. Right? That needs to be reformed. What else? Delete corruption wherever it allegedly exists. Wherever it exists. Then make the taxation system more rational. Why is it so cumbersome? Why can't everybody pay this simple tax? Right? Everybody is a taxpayer, by the way. If you buy a something that costs 10 rupees, you're paying tax on it. You're paying GST and whatnot. So it's not like only people who pay income tax are taxpayers. Everybody pays tax. Make the taxation system more rational, simplify it. Ease of doing business is very important. It's still very difficult to do business in India. Get something as simple as getting a GST number is so difficult in this country. So the reforms are needed across the board. Make the bureaucracy effective. Make the other institutions, which I will not name, effective. Clean them up. You need reforms across the board. Reforms everywhere are needed. Okay. Mani Saraswatullah. Thank you very much, Mani Saraswatullah. Thank you so much. And once again, Mani Saraswatullah. Thank you very much indeed. Mohit Sharma says, how IKS is different from modern education system? If all distortions are rooted in history, then should we be taught Vedas and how will it work? I am not an expert in IKS, Indian knowledge systems. I have done a podcast with the director of the Indian Institute of Science, Mandi, IIT Mandi, who is an expert in IKS. But I am no expert in the IKS. How is it different from the modern education system? I won't be able to answer you in effectively or in any great detail. Secondly, if all distortions are rooted in history, then should we be taught Vedas and how will it work? We should be taught correct history. Whether you want to learn the Vedas or not, it's a personal matter. I don't think the Indian education system teaches that. I'm not even sure if it needs to be taught in its entirety. The Vedas are so massive, right? There are 4 Vedas, and that's a lot of reading to do. And it's not for everybody. It's at a very high intellectual level. You can't teach the ordinary person the Vedas. You need to be intellectually slightly above average, at least, to be able to grasp what the Vedas are about. I would say we should teach correct history. Forget about teaching the Vedas. Teach correct history. That's what's needed. Ojas Satmajit says, really loved your content since 4 years. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Kindly explain the Bhima Koregaon incident, 1st January 1818. Did the Dalit side of the British? I don't know anything about this incident. So I'm very sorry. I don't know about this incident. I have never read about it. I don't know who fought whom, and I have no idea. Very sorry. But thank you so much. Thank you. Prateep Kumar Roy says, did you see the film Schindler's List? My favorite movie of all time, Godfather, I didn't like. I probably have seen Schindler's List, a black and white movie, Liam Neeson and so on. I have probably seen it. Yeah. Long time ago. Ben Kingsley and so on. Yeah, good movie. Not my favorite movie of all time, but definitely a very good movie. Godfather, I liked it very much. I don't know which one you watched. I've seen part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 3 is not the best. Part 1 and part 2, great. Part 2, even better than part 1. So I love the Godfather series. But it's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. We can agree to disagree. Everybody has their own taste and choices. So yes, I have seen Schindler's List long time ago, and it's definitely a great movie. Ayush Gupta says illegal immigrants of Bangladesh are mostly because of whom you think. Central State Vote Bank or BSF who themselves take bribes. Okay, sir. It's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. Massive, massive issue, and it needs to be resolved. We can't have 100 million, possibly 100 million illegal infiltrators squatting on our territory, leeching off our resources and taking so much space. We can't have that. What is the government doing? So it's a huge issue. Indeed. Sam the Gamer says, must meet before death. Accept me as Shishya. I hope we meet. All of you who I interact with in this virtual form, I hope to meet all of you someday. Before death, hopefully. Yeah, indeed. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, how has China and Southeast Asia gone so far ahead of India and we are left behind? The difference in infrastructure, for example, is huge. Look, their education systems are so much better than India. The Chinese have invested since the 1990s, mid 1990s. The Chinese have invested essentially trillions of dollars into completely overhauling their education system. They know that is the root, the foundation of national success. They have spent trillions of dollars reforming their education system. It's probably the best in the world today. Then they build high quality infrastructure. For example, they have a mission, the Chinese, that they're going to connect the entire country through high speed railways, and they don't allow anything to stop the mission. It doesn't take 20 years to build one railway line. Land acquisition, everything is streamlined, right? So they execute fast and they execute properly. In India, everything is half-hearted, haphazard sometimes, right? And these nations have built world-class manufacturing sectors. What do you need to have a world-class manufacturing sector? You need to have high-quality research and development. For having world-class R&D, you need to have corporations and companies that invest in R&D. You need a government that invests in R&D. To be able to do that, you need a high-quality education system. Everything is interconnected. They have solved these problems. We haven't solved any of these problems. That's the issue, right? I mean, we could have solved it. We can still do it. But is there any political will for that? That's the question. Do the politicians even agree that these are issues? I don't know. Ustad okay. Do you think the whole UGC policy release a sign that leftists / whoever else are infiltrating the BJP and it will lose both UP 27 state and Lok Sabha 29 as its GC support base will move away from it? Look, I do not comment about Indian politics, internal matters of India. I don't. Okay. So I don't know who is infiltrating whom and all that. What I will tell you is that this UGC policy thing is a disaster. It's horrible. It's terrible. It's absolutely against the interest of the country and our civilization. It's terrible. Beyond that, I cannot comment. I will not comment. Okay. This UGC thing, it seeks to divide our country into two classes: the oppressors and the oppressed, the permanently oppressed people and the permanent oppressors. It's almost like an apartheid policy. It's horrible. What are they doing? What is the government trying to achieve? I don't know really. Terrible. Sumit says Trump invites India to join Gaza Peace Board. FP, foreign policy, really? Let's see. Okay, Trump invites India to join Gaza Peace Board. Really? Board of Peace. But he says that every member of the Board of Peace has to pay $1 billion, right? Oh, whatever. Oh, we'll see about it. We'll see. Okay. Dheeraj Kamat says, civic sense propaganda has become weaponized by racists and anti-Indians. Apparently, anything done to us is justified because it is our civic sense. That's also an issue, right? It's not like Indians have the worst civic sense in the world. Civic sense is an issue. You can see the problems. But that obviously is used in a way that seeks to demonize India and to portray Indians as this permanently backward people and people who don't belong in the civilized world and so on. And that will then be the justification for any nonsense, that's any bad thing that's done to Indians, all the Hindu phobia, all the Indophobia and whatnot, all the demonization of Indians. So that's also a major issue, no question about that. You're right. Ayush Gupta says, how you felt for the first time when you had a good amount of knowledge of geopolitics and somehow you can see your country not doing anything, and every day you have to witness it burns me inside. It's not a good feeling. I don't know when I had a good amount of knowledge of geopolitics, but it's a realization that slowly dawns upon you over time when you are a younger person, and then you see it more and more. You see the problems the country is beset with, and you see that nothing is being done about them, and maybe some of the problems are being made worse, like what we are seeing with this UGC thing. What are we doing to ourselves? So yeah, it's extremely, it makes you unhappy. It frustrates you because this country has the so much potential. India has so much potential. The people of India has so much potential. India can genuinely be the greatest country in the world. But all, that depends on the quality of your leadership, if you can really achieve that. And I'm not saying we have horrible leadership, but you know, things are not being done entirely the way they should be. Brahmaputra Moskwa says, are you a theist, agnostic, or atheist, and why? I am a hopeful agnostic. Why am I an agnostic? I have never seen God or gods. I've never seen or witnessed any supernatural incident or any. I've never had, probably never had a supernatural experience, barring maybe one or two things that I can't explain. So that kind of, so because of that, I'm agnostic. I don't know if God or gods exist or not, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful there is God. I'm hopeful the gods are there in this one God, multiple gods, whatever. I have no idea, but I'm hopeful. Yeah, so that's what I am. That's my position. I'm a hopeful agnostic. It'll be so nice if the gods do exist and they're benevolent and beneficial and all that. It'll be great. Aditya Aditya Varmar says, big fan. Thank you so much. Thank you indeed. Hypothetically thinking, would applying reservations to Agniveer's government sector jobs and slightly rolling back caste-based reservations help in inculcating discipline in our nation's youth? Applying reservations to Agniveer's government sector jobs and slightly rolling back caste-based reservations help in I'm not sure exactly what you're proposing. I'm not sure how it is done in the Agniveer. There is the army thing. Applying reservations to see, I'm not sure exactly. I'm a little confused, but I am not a proponent of reservations, caste-based reservations. We need to end caste-based reservations. Reservations are fine. If you want to give reservations to people, give them reservations on the basis of their financial status, economic status. People who are economically not well off, sure, give them reservations. Don't give it based on caste, man. You're creating more problems in the country. That is my simple position on this matter. I am completely against any caste-based reservations. Give reservations based on economic status, and that too not forever. Chaitanya says, Chavda Index 2026 when I love the 24 version, but there was no 25 version as well. Yes, thank you for the reminder. I shall make a move on that. I shall move forward with that. Thank you. Thank you. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, I recently found out that Rig Vedic Indra rides on horses. The white elephant Airavat was later added in the Puranas. Why don't we worship the old Vedic gods nowadays? Because of the Vaishnavas? Look, thousands of years have passed since the Rig Veda. So much has happened. Today, nobody even worships Lord Indra. You go to various temples, you will see sometimes, murti, an idol of Dyoshpitru. But you won't find a murti of Indra in many temples. Why is that? Right? And okay, I'm not aware of whether the Rig Vedic Indra rode horses. It makes sense that he would have. Airavat came later. You will see statues of Airavat in Thailand, in Bangkok, and so on. And Indra, of course. Indrapuri is Bangkok. So why don't we worship the old Vedic gods nowadays? Because thousands of years have passed and so much has changed in Indian society. Why don't people worship Indra? Indra was the greatest of the Vedic gods, right? The head of the pantheon of the Vedic gods. Jupiter, Zeus Pater, Zeus, Jupiter, Thor, that's Indra. Those are later versions of Indra, same god. And Indra was the most powerful of the Vedic gods. And Indra was also the god of thunder, lightning, and rain. His Indra's weapon is Vajra. Vajra is a hammer, it's also a thunderbolt, right? Vajra. It's crafted out of the ribbed bones of a great Vedic sage. That's the original Mjolnir. Now, Indra was also the god of rain, rainfall. And why did the greatest of our rivers, the mother of our civilization, the Saraswati, why did she disappear? Because of a lack of rainfall. Who was responsible for that? Indra. Do you think people would continue worshipping him after that? After the demise of the Saraswati, the mother of Indian civilization? There are reasons for that. And see, Indian civilization has existed over geological timescales. Rivers have come and gone, disappeared, and so on. That's how old our civilization is. And that's why so many changes have happened. That's why many of the older gods are no longer worshipped. And newer gods have taken their place. And those newer gods are also continuations in some way or other, or other of the older gods. Okay. Abhi says, masturbation effects on today's youth. Sure. I am not your guy. I don't know anything about this. I'm sure there are many podcasters, YouTubers who are into this and who have advanced theories of these matters. I am no expert in these matters, semen retention and so on and so forth. Sorry. I'm not the guy for this. All right. Okay. Rahul says, is workout and daily sadhana part of your life? It needs to be more of an integral part of my life. Right now, I'm kind of living a slightly indisciplined life. I'm been traveling a lot the past few days, roughly the past month, and my schedule is all over the place. Sometimes I wake up early, sometimes I wake up late, sometimes I sleep late, and so on. So right now, workout, etc., is not very much part of my life. Sadhana, also right now, not very much part of my life. Maybe I should make these, not maybe, but most definitely, I need to be more disciplined going forward. Right. So, yeah. Abhirup Sarkar says, Stoic men videos claim women are biologically inclined to test partners and seek better mates. Is marriage in India a long-term risk? Look, marriage is a fundamental, integral societal institution. It's an integral part of Indian culture, civilization, and society. But is marriage today a long-term risk? Well, based on the kind of laws we have and the lopsided nature of laws and the lopsided nature of the way certain gender males are being victimized, maybe marriage is more of a risk today than it was 50 years ago. Maybe even more than it was 30 years ago. I don't know about what Stoic men videos say that women are biologically inclined to do this or that. I don't know about that. But because of the kind of laws we have and the way the laws are interpreted, I think marriage has kind of become more of a risk for men. So that obviously seems to be a ploy to bring India's TFR down and so on. So that's a major issue. The government should do something about it if the government would like to, unless the government also wants our TFR to come down and they want more disharmony in society. Okay, Arush says, B.Tech biomed student targeting Deutschland, European Unions. Any suggestions? I have absolutely no idea, sir. I am not in the field of educational placements or whatever. I have no idea which country has better options for biomedical sciences and all. I really don't know. You should consult a professional, somebody who has proper knowledge, professional knowledge of which country offers what courses and what things, and you should take their suggestions. I really don't know. So I apologize, but I'm not the right person to answer your question. And Died in a Plane Crash says, one of the criticisms of Durandar, according to people of certain lobby, is that it's a well-made movie and well-made propaganda is quite dangerous. What's my opinion? Okay, so some people say it's propaganda and it's well made, so it's even more dangerous as propaganda. It's a well made movie. It has some small flaws and defects here and there, but overall, for Bollywood standards, it's an excellent movie. And is it propaganda? It's not propaganda, it's truth. It's absolutely truthful. It's based on historical events, and whatever fictional stuff is depicted, that's fiction. How is that propaganda? How is other Bollywood garbage and trash not propaganda? How is Jodha Akbar not propaganda? So don't take these people seriously. Who cares what the certain lobby says and what they believe? Who cares? Disregard them, ignore them. Why do they matter? Don't take them seriously. Durandar is fantastic. I loved it. I look forward to watching the next one. If I can, I'll like to watch one more, do one more watching of Durandar, if I can. Let's see. Okay, Dan Greengrass says, does these ridiculous criticisms indicate their frustration? Yes, it does. They are very frustrated that finally somebody made a good Bollywood movie that portrays the truth instead of the propaganda they've been dishing out. So it does indicate their frustration, no question. Okay, that brings me to the end of today's questions. All right. Enjoyed this very much. Took a very, 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 very large variety and wide variety of questions. Thank you so much for your questions. I'm going to end this live stream here. It's been more than 3 hours. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your questions. Keep asking questions, keep learning, keep raising your standards. And I shall see you very soon in next week's live streams. Until then, take care. Good day, good night. Bye bye. I'll see you soon.